Hello everyone, welcome to the 36th episode of the Drunken Boxing Podcast, coming to you as usual from Beijing. Alright, let's get directly into some Mushin martial culture news. I have released part 5 of my in-depth interview with Xiaodong. In it, he touches on the difficulties he had due to personal targeting, as well as aspects related to his case with the Chen clan. The full interview of this segment is available to anyone who supports me on Patreon, while a slightly edited version is available to the public on YouTube. I have explained why this is the case previously. Alright, I also restored and subtitled an episode regarding the legend in Shuaijiao named Wang Wenyong. He was born in 1933 and passed away in 2017. He was a famous older generation Shuaijiao champion and student of Jin Baosheng. Wang Wenyong has dedicated his entire life to the practice, development, and spread of Shuaijiao, even spreading it to Europe, France in particular. This is an old, short documentary produced a few years prior to him passing away. I have subtitled, dubbed, and added relevant information to it for the international community to enjoy. I also released an old documentary on Baguazhang. This documentary was produced in approximately 1986 in Beijing and features many of the prominent lineages, styles, and practitioners. It portrays the methods and characteristics of these styles as they were existent in Beijing. I have added English subtitles and relevant information to this documentary, and it is a valuable piece of history, and now it's accessible to non-Chinese speakers. As always, doing this type of translation and editing is time-consuming and difficult. So any and all support you are able to give me through Patreon makes this worthwhile of my time and skills, and will enable me to produce more such content into the future, of which I have quite a few projects planned. There are general support tiers on Patreon through which you can do that, and any and all support is highly appreciated. There is also a third tier, the Huajin tier, in which you can study the arts of Xingyiquan and Baguazhang in depth. There is already quite a large library of released lesson videos for both of these arts, as well as their related Neigong practices. So if you are interested in learning authentic Xingyiquan and Liang-style Baguazhang, give the course a try. The Patreon site may be found at patreon.com/Mushin Martial Culture. That's Mushin Martial Culture, all one word. Additionally, as always, various Mushin martial culture merchandise is available on my Teespring store. There is a variety of items available, so go have a look. If you feel like supporting this podcast and my endeavors on YouTube indirectly, getting some of the Mushin martial culture merchandise is one way to do it. You can find the store at the link in the show notes. Okay, let's get on to today's podcast. My guest today is Emanuele Papa, who's also called Manu. He hails from Italy. Manu was a guest on the first 2 episodes of In Discussion With, along with my good friend Lavell Marshall. Emanuele Papa has studied traditional Chinese martial arts since the age of 15 and started practicing Shuaijiao in 2017. He is a student of Master Li Deshun in Beijing, who he met during his time he spent here studying for his master's degree. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology and a Master's in Philosophy from Renmin University. He is currently using wrestling to investigate the concept of ethnic and group identity and its transformation from the Qing dynasty up until today. Alright, just a quick note on this particular episode. Unfortunately, my neighborhood had sent out a notification that they were going to turn off the electricity at a certain a certain point in the night, and I had to cut the podcast recording, the initial recording, slightly short due to this risk of having the electricity shut off. Nonetheless, I then recontacted Manu a couple of weeks later, and we recorded the second part because there was a bit of aspects of his journey that I wanted to flesh out, and we did. So it might sound a bit strange at some point that there's a cutoff and then an addition, and also maybe 1 or 2 little aspects he might have repetitively discussed. But all in all, I think we got all the information that we wanted to discuss out. Also, it is one of the longer episodes, so take your time with it and enjoy it. So with that, I bring you Emanuele Papa. Okay, welcome to the Drunken Boxing Podcast, Emanuele Papa. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So we had you as our first guest, along with Lavell Marshall, on that In Discussion With, which was a different kind of thing. Even though it's a discussion like the podcast, it was more of a focused topic discussion. Now we're going to have you on the Drunken Boxing Podcast, which is generally more casual. We try to get into people's stories, their histories, their journeys, and just literally let discussions go wherever they go. So I'm very happy that you're on. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Byron. It was great. Our chat with Lavell, I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of things we want to discuss, and I think it's very important, to talk about these things because most of the time people don't really know about them, and us that have like a little more experience, especially in China, it's good that we meet together and chat because most of the time people don't really, want to talk with each other or some like small personalism. So
Right,
it's
right.
good.
Well, that was the whole purpose of, firstly, the Drunken Boxing podcast and then my channel in general. But I mean, the Drunken Boxing podcast, I really wanted to talk to. I mean, look, we all grew up on Kung Fu magazines. We all grew up on the general, what was out there in the West in English back in the day. And they all have their place. But I wanted something that was focused more on getting more meat out of people's journeys. So it's not like, very short discussions or very superficial discussions. But also I wanted to talk to people that were a lot more deep in the practices. So people like yourself who have come all the way over to China before and studied. And people like Lavell who've gone like into places in the grasslands doing stuff there that, well, I would say probably no foreigner has really done to the level he's doing with regards to Mongolian wrestling. But anyway, that was the goal. And you're right. I think a lot of people don't really talk about these things or don't have the opportunity to hear from people with these experiences. So that's the goal of this. And yeah. So I wanted to...
I think it's a great mission.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're a guest on here. So again, because it's a separate kind of show, sometimes it's different people as well. Some people listen to the audio only version of the podcast. Maybe some people didn't see our discussion on In Discussion With. Maybe you want to give a brief introduction about yourself.
Well, yeah. So I'm quite young. I'm gonna turn 28 this year. I started practicing Chinese martial arts when I was around, I think, 14 or 15, I think.
Okay.
And I had a chance to start practicing traditional martial arts. So not the modern wushu version, although I did some basic, because something you can translate, but it's the core is completely different. Like the approach is different.
Right. And you started in Italy, right?
I started with that.
In Italy.
Oh yeah, I started in Italy. Yeah. Because I'm from Italy.
Yeah, okay, exactly. So for the listeners that are listening out there, right now you are in Italy. You are Italian, and okay. So where are you exactly?
Right now I live in a small city close to Modena, which
Right.
is, for those who know, maybe you know where a Ferrari is made, the supercar. So this is like a car valley. So we have Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Maserati all in the same place, and I
wow.
basically lived right in the middle.
Well, you can understand where my interests are, because when you told me that you're close to Modena, I didn't think about cars. I thought about vinegar, balsamic vinegar.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because that's also a very special place that makes some of the best. I'm a big balsamic vinegar fan, so but yeah, that's very interesting.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
vinegar is like from here. Like no vinegar is like black vinegar, especially. It's like you can't find it anywhere else. Like the original one.
So, do people like yourself and people native to the area, do you guys eat balsamic almost every day?
Oh, I'm not sure about every day, but like we eat a lot of it. And there's because with balsamic vinegar, there's different kinds. So you have like the aged one, which is like the sweeter, and you can't put it on everything, and it's very expensive because it's like whiskey, Like when you age it, it becomes like for vinegar, it becomes more thicker, like a little thicker, and then very sweet. And you can age a vinegar until 100 years, but when it gets very, very expensive.
Well, it kind
the
of
normal one, we have it with like salad.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Chinese black vinegar, chensu or heizu, especially up in the north. People generally from the Shanxi area. They basically, and I mean, if you've lived up here or you'll see a lot of black vinegar. In the south, I don't see it as much, but in the north, almost every restaurant will you'll find it probably a bottle of black vinegar on the table. It's different,
Oh
but
yeah.
similar. It's made from rice in China, whereas in Italy it's made from grapes. But yeah,
Grapes. Yeah.
yeah, they eat it like, especially people from Shanxi, they'll eat it every day on a lot of their food. So that's I guess somewhat similar. Somewhat
Oh yeah, I
similar.
mean, I find a lot of similarities between Italy and China a lot of times.
Really? In what sense?
Oh yeah, I really think like Chinese are the Asian version of Italians most of the times.
You don't think that the Italians are the European versions of the Chinese?
Well, yeah, the same thing, man. Like works both way, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. But what makes you say that? In what sense?
I mean, hospitality wise, they're very welcoming. If of course, if you know Chinese most of the times,
Yeah.
how like the level they're attached to family, the kind of food culture, um, the way they approach sometimes money and work, and even in some shady ways. Like here, people always try to find a way out, a easy way out, and then in China, like that's what happens most of the time.
Oh, that's true. That's quite interesting. Actually, yeah, specifically about the family thing, I mean, you'll find like 3 generations under one roof. It's quite common in China, maybe even 4 generations, and I think I saw that, and it's quite common in Italy as well. In fact, it's I would say
Wow, yeah.
even Mediterranean culture. I mean, I'm Greek, so in some senses that is quite common as well. So yeah, very
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely a lot of similarities.
Well, we got into a little bit of you said that you started to do traditional Chinese martial arts in Italy, and then we got on to where you were from. So what did you start practicing with, or what did you start practicing?
So I started practicing a style that was called Meihuaquan. So I don't know how to translate it into English. It's a plum flower
Yeah,
fist, I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
Something, some kind of translation like that. And I started here. I kept practicing, and then the more like I was practicing, the more I was, getting interested into understanding where these things came from, and like that's how I decided, I'm not really good at, you know, studying stuff like math, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, why not to try to understand other people? And I decided that I wanted to understand why, like specifically Chinese martial arts are where the way they are. Like it's very, if you see something that is like Chinese or Chinese martial arts, you can immediately say, oh, that's, what people say, oh, that's Kung Fu. And I was kind of like fascinated by that and the way of writing. And so throughout my high school, I started reading stuff. And at the end of my high school, I decided, why not to, give it a shot and studying it for real.
Right. And that throughout that time, you were practicing Meihua still at the same time?
Yeah, only like Meihuaquan, yeah. Like that's it until I started going to China.
Meihua is for people that have come to the northern part of China. It's actually quite common. It's quite well known. But I found that, of course, in the south, that it isn't as common. But also because of that, in general, in the West, a lot of people don't really know about Meihua. In some senses, it's called Meihuaquan. Sometimes it's called Meihuazhuang. But it's quite common up in the north
Yes.
of China. And in fact, a lot of the times you'll see that older generation Chinese martial arts, traditional Chinese martial arts practitioners here in the north, when they were growing up, they might have learned some Meihua as some of their foundation. Specifically because of your core practices that maybe you want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, like Meihua is most of the times like it's a very broad name, it's a style that comprehends a lot of different branches, a
Yeah.
lot of different things, and it goes, I think, south as much as maybe Jiangsu province.
Yeah.
So nothing south than that. Starts to become like very different. And most of the time, people in the West might know it through like Taiwan or people that come out of Taiwan, and generally in the West, it's sometimes known as Shaolin Quan, which is not Shaolin Quan. But when the first teachers started to go abroad, they came mainly from the Republican era, and The main division during the time was Shaolin Quan and Wudang Quan.
Exactly.
So when they brought it abroad, they were like, this is Shaolin Quan. And they started talking about this monastery and blah, blah. So some people still believe it's Shaolin Quan.
Right.
But it actually is not. And I would say the core foundation of Meihuaquan, which is one of the reasons why it's very practiced, or at least a lot of people at least did something. It's because it's based on Zhangzhuang.
Exactly.
So 5 positions that you hold.
Yeah.
And it's mainly about that, the changes that you can have between one and the other, and like a big form that can last up to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Even more.
Well, just for some listeners who don't know, Zhangzhuang means post-standing, or in some senses, standing statically, doing a specific posture, holding. That's Zhangzhuang. And it's interesting that you said this, because even my teacher, when he was very young, he learned it as well in the beginning stages. And he used to just he showed me quite a bit of it as well. And I actually have friends that are from different parts of China that grew up practicing it as well. So those 5 main stances, those 5 main postures are like shunbu, so it means aligned, same hand, same leg, ao, opposite hand, opposite leg, etc.
Exactly.
And you're supposed to hold each one for a certain amount of breaths. So you're supposed to breathe in and out.
Exactly.
X amount of times, and then that's why it also takes a long time to run through all of those, because you're supposed to breathe slowly, etc. But this is foundational Northern Chinese martial art training, because you're developing strength through holding the posture and regulating your breathing, etc., etc. So it's quite a good practice, and it's quite representative of a lot of the foundational practices of Chinese martial art. So it's quite interesting. Was it quite popular in Italy when you were growing up?
Oh, well, the thing is this. The first Chinese teacher that came to Italy, which was a Chinese, and he was, let's say, it was a general during the Republican era that had to flee to Taiwan.
Yeah.
And so he was first invited to Italy as the first representative of Chinese martial arts. He started like disseminating this Meihuaquan that he called Shaolin Quan.
Right.
So we could say it was basically almost the first style that spread here in Italy. And this is not, so you're talking about these 5 positions, and you maybe saw them practice, especially in Beijing, because there's a big tradition of Meihuaquan in Beijing. But his Meihuaquan was different from the one that we see in Beijing. It's another branch. The one in Beijing is called Shuaijiao, which means a small frame.
Yeah.
Instead, he practiced something that is called Bai Jiazhi, the branch of the Bai family, which comes from Jiangsu province. So Peixiang is a province in Jiangsu, which is we could say is Dajia, so the big frame, so the older version, one of the older version of Meihuaquan.
Okay, very interesting.
And so Meihuaquan, at least in the 70s, 80s, and up to the beginning of the 90s, was very, very common. Yeah. Then people started to go to China and bring back some different things, and now it's less common, especially because the fact that this guy was not really able to speak Italian, and the fact that he was people of the karate here trying to bring him around and made his practice more karate look like.
Really?
So
oh, wow.
People, yeah. That's how it worked with Chinese martial arts here, because the guys from karate wanted to do something else. The movies from Hong Kong started to arrive in Italy, in Europe, in the US, and everybody wanted to jump and do those kicks and use sabers. And unless you did some Okinawan stuff, you had some weapons, but it's being the fact is it's based Okinawan karate is being based on Southern Chinese martial arts. You have less fleshy things, right?
Right.
It's more standing on the ground. So people want to do more, let's say, entertaining stuff, and that's why they try to bring somebody from China.
Okay.
And when they saw that a lot of these movements were not that easy to learn for somebody that has a karate background, all those round movements, thinking about, relaxing your body and then holding those positions. They started to, let's say, use karate to understand Chinese martial art, which is not ideal.
Yeah, that's that. Are you there?
Yeah.
I thought
I'm here.
I thought I lost you there. But yeah, that's very interesting. I mean,
No.
I also know like a lot of the time, as you said, a lot of the teachers just called it Shaolin Quan. And I found that even some groups of practitioners in the West and outside of China, speaking from my experience in South Africa, there were certain schools that taught traditional systems as they learned it from their teachers, which were kind of hybridized. So they had a little bit of content from this and a little bit of content from that. Very much in line with what would have come out of the Nanjing Guoshuguan and then people from there afterwards, because it was, kind of a mixed up standardized system that they were trying to put together. And even they didn't know that some of the stuff they were practicing was Meihua. I mean, they didn't know that.
Yeah.
And even worse than that, a lot of them didn't even know that their content was Cha-Chuan, which at times is practiced together. I mean, there are instances of those.
Yeah.
And they would just call it either Long Fist or Shaolin Long Fist or just Shaolin Quan. And like a few of them, after I got to know a few of them and I saw their content, for example, in South Africa, I said, you guys are doing Meihua and Cha-Chuan combined. And they're like, no, we're doing Shaolin Quan. Comes from the Shaolin Temple.
Yeah, of course.
So it's very hard for people to know that. And Meihuaquan actually has quite another interesting history. I'm sure you know of this, which is connected to the Boxers' Rebellion. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what was your system like?
And that's extremely interesting.
We can get into that. I mean, if you've got information.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just keep this very brief because it's a very, very big and complex argument. Topic, because you go into history and the Boxer Rebellion was a huge thing, and so basically what happened is that everything started from a small village in Hebei.
Yeah.
And so basically,
which wasn't called
people
Hebei.
They were starving and
it wasn't called Hebei.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't remember the name at the time. I'm sorry.
Zhili is the general name
that
they used for that area, but it was kind of encompassing, a bit of Hebei, a bit of Shandong, and a bit more, So yeah, it was that general area, and they were starving. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I cut you off because it was quite.
They were no, don't worry. They were starving and. It was an area full of bandits, and it was definitely not easy to survive in those circumstances. And the government, because it was like very decentralized from the capital, was not really sending any troops or anything. So the village started to ask for help from like a martial arts organization of another village.
Yeah.
It was close by for protection. And basically, what happened was that a controversy arose on a church, like whether this church was to be, dedicated to something new or was like have to be rebuilt or something. And from that, basically, they started like a big fight, and the village had to ask for the protection of this like a martial arts group that arrived, and then from there it spread like up to Beijing. I don't remember all the details, unluckily, because there's definitely very interesting.
There's interesting books on this that you can read. I mean, I don't know if you've read Escherwick's work called The Origins of the Boxer Rebellion or Boxer Uprising, I think.
Oh yeah.
Which is a great book. I mean, it's already, I think, 40 years old. It's actually quite depressing. I might have spoken about it before. Because when you read about the reality of what was happening and the starving and all the, one disaster after another, which was just making things worse and worse, and the hellish lives that these people were going through at that time, it's quite depressing. And even down to the effects of what it led them to, these actions like the Boxer Rebellion, etc. It was just... It's very sad, actually, reading. I remember I read that book a very long time ago, But I read about 1/3 of it, got very sad, very depressed, and I put the book down for I think 3 or 4 months until I felt a bit better. And then I started reading the rest of it, just simply because of, the picture that it painted of the time. It was a very terrible period. When you said a church...
Yeah, it was very harsh.
Yeah, were you saying a Western church?
A Western church,
Yeah.
a Catholic church.
Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, it was all connected to all of these things. Very interesting.
Yeah, and like the main thing we have to keep in mind, what is interesting of the beginning of the Boxer Rebellion, besides the historical facts, is that it tells us something very important, especially about Meihuaquan, is that this organization was on a social level. It was not just practicing martial arts, okay? It was a way to integrate the practice of martial arts with the village and the people of the village. So it was, let's say, a very holistic practice. You had like pieces of religion, beliefs, and then the hierarchical structure of the martial arts decided like who was doing what and how to give aid to the village, how to help other villages, and it was a way to survive in that specifically harsh period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Did your practice, I mean, I don't know if your lineage that you practice Meihua, do you know about the...
I don't practice Meihua anymore.
I know you don't anymore, but back then...
For many reasons.
Do you know the there's a type of a weapons cart? Do you know about this?
Oh, yeah.
That you take apart and the whole thing is a bunch of weapons, actually. The entire cart that you're pushing is actually a puzzle of weapons, really.
That's very interesting. Like some people say it comes directly from the spirit. So we have to remember that practicing martial arts during Ming and Qing dynasty was not as easy, especially during the Ming dynasty, because it was forbidden. So farmers have to find their way to protect themselves without showing that they were carrying weapons.
Yeah.
So what the legends say is that this cart was made out of all weapons that when you were out doing your farm work, and if some bandits arrived, you could like take this apart and then use a part of this thing to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And we still have traces of this that became very much for like a demonstration practices. So you have this chart that you can take apart and has like some so like I don't know how to say
crutch
in English.
A crutch.
Crutches. Yeah, like you have a wheel with all like the spear points, and then you have like a shield made out of the side of the cart. It's very interesting. Yeah,
it's actually very cool. I mean, it's a nice idea, but a lot of people don't actually know, as you said, the reason for why it was done. And there's even, a lot of the time today we see this Chinese martial art weapon, which we see a specific shape, and it's all the same today. It's like, if you see it, it's always the same, and it's called a pudao. But actually, we don't even know what pudao was really like further back in time. I mean, there's things called pudaos. There's certain names further back calling bodao. I don't know if you've heard this before. Bo as into part. And it was also some sort of a long stick with a blade on it. And the same thing. They were a lot of common folk were forbidden to have weaponry, and they were just trying to protect themselves. So they would have a bunch of sticks like in a cart that they would be chopping wood or moving wood around, but they'd always hide one long blade in there. But they'd have the blade in such they were allowed to have the blade for chopping the wood, but they had made it in a way that there's one shaft amongst all the wood. And the blade is in such a way that it could be attached, so it's no longer just a blade for chopping wood, but now it's a weapon because it's got a long pole arm. It's like a pole arm. So yeah, it's a similar story to what you just said about hiding it and just having it ready in case you need the weapon. So it's quite an interesting history.
Yeah, I mean, today we're very much used to having everything, or at least when we approach Chinese martial arts, everything is standardized, and this is a dao, this is a saber, this is a jian, and then these are the movements. But like as we said many times, we mentioned with Lavell, like these practices were very much related to the historical period in which they started. So as you said, you had to hide the blade of your weapon because you couldn't carry it. So the shape of the weapon changes. The shape of the blade, for example, in sabers changes through times because of the way, people were protecting themselves, like armors or just clothes. So the shape of the blade changes. So all these small differences that most of the times we don't remember today tells us a piece of the story, a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, that exactly. And how long did you practice that for? We got into it that you started with that practicing. Then when you finished high school, you wanted to go more into learning about people and cultures and things like that. So how long were you practicing Meihua for?
So I was practicing mainly Meihua until I think was 20, because I practiced two different branches. One is the branches that my teacher taught me, which was he studied both Xiaojia, so the small frame, and the big frame with another person.
Okay.
So he studied the small frame under the Master Li from Henan, and the one that came to Italy from a master that was called Shuaijiao.
Okay.
I studied that until 15, 16, where I this is a funny story. So I first went to China in 2014.
Okay.
And at the time, I was still practicing Meihuaquan, and I was greedy to find books about it. And one day I walked into a bookshop, and I found this book with Meihuaquan written on it. Okay. But I looked at it and I was like, this looks so different from the one that I'm used to.
Right.
And it was called on the cover of the book. It was written 五字美化拳. So 五 like Marshall, it's like 字, like the master, and 五字 is one of the military masters of the past, of the like Sun Bin or Sun Zi, or all those kind of masters. 五字 is just another one. And I was like fascinated. I bought the book. Okay, I bought the book. I went back to Italy. I started reading it. This was 2015, after I came back. And then one day, is like 2015, I went back to China, but still I was just studying. I was not practicing. And I was like, why don't I try to contact the guy that wrote this book?
Okay.
Because I want to know more about it. And I was like, I need to find a way to contact him. I was like, maybe he wrote his number on the book.
Yeah, they sometimes do.
And at the end of that for us is crazy, right?
Yeah.
And I read the book, and at the end I was like, I saw a number. I was like beside his name or something. And I'm like, what if this is his number? So I added that number on WeChat, and my God, it was his number. And I'm like, I'm not joking. I sent him a message. I'm saying, I'm Italian. I practice different branch of Meihuaquan. I bought your book. I think I bought his book in Shenzhen, I think.
Wow.
I would really love to try, to learn with you, like at least know what it is. And I told him next year, because I started going to China in 2014, and I was there every year. Okay.
This was for studies,
just back
right?
and forth every year.
This was for studies, school studies.
Always for school studies, always with university.
Okay.
Scholarships, going to different Chinese universities. And I was like, next year, so 2016, I'm going to Renmin University in Beijing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stay there for a couple months in the summer. And then after that, back then, your like holiday visa, like tourist visa, could be as long as like 4 months or something.
Yeah. Well, you could extend it.
Not right now.
Yeah, you could also extend it.
You could extend it, right. And I was like, once I'm done with studying, I would love to come visit. And he was like, of course, perfect. I'm like, what, really? And then he told me, this is not, I'm not joking. It was like, okay, when do you finish studying? So I was like, I finish at around, I think, the end of July. And he's like, okay, you take a train from Beijing to Henan and to this city. It's called Xinxiang. And then I come there with my car to pick you up because I don't live in a big city. I live kind of like in a smaller city. So we have to drive back to my place. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I did it. I was like, I finished studying in Beijing. I took a train, completely going like, so my Chinese back then was still not the best. It's like, compared to now, like I was still, because Chinese is very hard. No matter how much you study, the first couple of years are going to be tough.
Right.
And, you know, my Chinese was okay in university, but when you go out, it's different. It's a different story.
Yeah.
And I went on a train and I was thinking, you know, like what the fuck is going to happen? And then I arrived in Henan, okay? And I only saw him in the picture before that. And then I saw this guy at the train station with like a piece of paper with my name written on it, like waving it out, and was like screaming, "Oh!" Of course, I was the only foreigner in that like small place in Henan, and it was like, "Oh, it's you, it's you." And then he picked me up, and then we drove for I don't know 2-3 hours to get to his place.
Wow.
And I was like, you know, he didn't tell me anything. Like before that. We talked maybe 2 times. Okay, so a total of 5 messages on WeChat.
Right.
And I was like, where am I gonna stay? And he was like, you're gonna stay in my house. I was like, okay. So basically from that day for 2 months, I lived with him, him and his family, every day, the whole day. And we were like practicing from morning 6 a.m. to around 11, and then lunch break, and then from 3 to 8. And it was like summer, Henan, crazy hot.
Of course.
But I was happy, you know. I was learning this new system, which, according to the legend, is based on the teaching of which is a military strategist.
Right.
And still, you can see the frame of Meihuaquan, because the Meihuaquan moves on a field, on a square field, following the 8 directions. And it was basically Meihuaquan, but different. And I was like, I'm learning some new things. And that period was crazy. And I still think about it, and it's crazy because the funny part is this. So that moment was, I mean, there's a lot of funny parts about that, about the pain. I have a lot of stories we can talk about. But the funny thing is that today, it was a very important period for the development of my Chinese.
That'll do it.
Today, when I
for
speak
sure,
with
that'll
Chinese,
do it. That'll do it.
I mean, that did it. That did it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that today, when I speak Chinese with my friends or with new people that I meet, they're always like, "You have such a strong Henan accent." And I'm like, I didn't do it on purpose, but I think it's because of that. Like, a big part of the development of my Chinese happened right there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you say "zhong" instead of for yes? Zhong.
No. No, I try to speak normal Putonghua, but sometimes you have some inflections, let's say.
But you know what you just said about that guy not even knowing you, you know, a couple of messages and then opening his door to you in his home, letting you stay with him, teaching you, being so eager to teach you. This is the thing that we were talking about at the beginning of this, about the hospitality. And, you know, people don't know this.
Exactly.
And, you know, there's so much bad. Today's day and age, it's all these countries screaming and shouting at other countries as the devil and whatever. But when you know the average Chinese person, especially, you know, these Chinese martial artists who are usually poor, they've dedicated their whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, the average, you know, Chinese people are in general very welcoming, very accommodating, very nice. They'll help you out. And then if you find a martial artist and you're a foreigner, he can't get enough people to learn it from him here in China. And you're a foreigner. They're so eager and so happy, you know, and it's just something special. I mean, I don't know how many more generations of people and experiences like that we still have, to be honest. But, you know, it's a good thing that you experienced that.
I had like, I've been always extremely lucky in China because I met great people. Every time they were like super eager to help me and teach me. Right. And when you show that you put your work in, because
exactly.
Like, you're not slacking off, like, you know, on laying on the ground and saying, "Oh, I don't like the food. It's hot," and blah blah. They love when you try to learn different things, new things. And I remember him saying to me, or to his, I think, because the story was that back that summer, his son was also practicing with us.
Okay.
And this is a big problem because, if you have a foreigner that is, extremely willing to train and
I
your
know.
son is super lazy,
I know.
of course this is going to go the wrong way, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why a lot of
In the
times,
beginning, his son hated me.
yeah, of course, and a lot of times Chinese martial artists won't teach their son; they'll get their kung fu brother to do it, and this is part of the reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember with my teacher, his older brother's son. He I won't say he trained with us because I think he arrived 3 times, and this was a long time ago. He arrived maybe 3 or 4 times. And he was just so not wanting to train and so lazy. And of course, I'm really serious about my training. And he just happened to join the sessions that I'm there with my teacher. So every 5 minutes, all my teacher is doing is scolding him and telling him to be like me. So of course, that makes this guy start to hate you, right? And But anyway, he stopped training.
100%.
He stopped training after 3 or 4 times. So. But yeah, that happened. So I can understand the teacher's son being upset with you.
Yeah.
So what was the system in fact?
That period was great.
What was the system in fact? And do you I mean, in looking at it, I don't know how deep you went into it or how deep you went into researching it, but these attributions to Sun Bing or Sun Zi or Yue Fei or this or that, most of the time it's done in much more recent or later times, and it's generally just honorary. It's not even a fact. It's not even based on reality. So what is the case with what you were learning there? Was it a variation that branched off Meihua, or what do you think?
This is very important. Like, people need to realize what you just said, because most of them don't really do. So when your teacher tells you that your style, no matter what you're doing, is like 1,400 years old, that's not true, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
And all these attribution to eminent figures, it's very common in China. Yeah. And it's a way to give prestige and recognition to something. Like all the attribution to UFA or whatever hero in the past. And what I did specifically, I think, so if you compare it, for example, with the Xiaojia Meihuaquan or Dajia Meihuaquan, it's clearly more recent.
Yeah, I would have
Why?
thought so.
Because, I mean, yeah, it's 100%. Because when you see, at least especially for you, that you're very familiar with like Chinese martial arts, when you see something that's really old, it's clear that it's old. Like, the movements are very simple. They're not more than 5-6 movements. You can mix them together, but it's like you don't have those flowery movements. Yeah. Certain positions don't appear. There's always a very big focus on certain things like a spear or something else. To me, this was something that was based on Meihuaquan, because when you see the form and the routines, it's clear. Like, you move in a square field on the 8 directions. You repeat left and right. The same movements you repeat them on the left. You do them on the right. Exactly the same. But you don't see the positions as clear as they are. The 5 positions as clear as they are in other branches. So to me, this is something that was that changed in a more recent period to appear more martial. So with more punches and kicks and stuff. Although it's still very, very simple. It's like not, let's say, it's not a Chachuan routine. Okay. Yeah. Although Chachuan is still quite old, but certain forms are more recent. Yeah. So to me, it's something like that. It's mixed, something that mixed with Meihuaquan at a certain point, and or somebody was very keen on using the military strategists to give more importance to the theoretical background of the style.
Exactly. It's interesting though, because you were in Beijing, and there is, as you said earlier, there's a lot of Meihua in Beijing, and
Mm-hmm.
you were in Beijing and you traveled to Henan, to some middle of nowhere, to do Meihua. Did you ever do any Meihua in Beijing?
So I got in contact a few times with people in Beijing, but this tells us like a very big story about how martial arts works. So the Meihua in Beijing come mainly from one teacher, and when this teacher died, his main students started to teach, and right now you have mainly the lineage of how's it called? I don't remember his name. I think it's. This tells you how much I still practice Meihuaquan. So,
Is he?
in Beijing,
He
right now you have
recently
a
died. Did he
Oh
recently?
no, yeah. If he died, I didn't know.
No. Who?
But
Who?
hopefully not.
Oh, okay. So I thought you said.
So this guy also trained Baguazhang with Li Ziming.
Really?
Yeah, you have this branch right now that is you have this guy teaching Meihuaquan and Baguazhang, because most of the times, or at least in oral history, Baguazhang and Meihuaquan are often mentioned together, although the Baguazhang that is referred in relation with Meihuaquan is not the one from Beijing. At least that's what Yan Zijie says.
Really?
But this other teacher in Beijing has quite a big group and has some Italian students that are very well trained, I would say.
Okay.
But they're all older than me, and I never got a chance to train with them. But he also teaches Baguazhang. And another group that was training from a teacher that I wanted to train with, but he died, I think, in 2016 or 12. I don't remember.
Okay.
They don't have students that train at the level that I wanted to train, because as we said, Meihuaquan had being related a lot of the times with physical benefit practices, or holding the post positions, and sometimes you get a lot of people that just like to stay there and breathe, so they don't really train the other aspects.
Right.
Which Meihuaquan is very important and very well known for his martial abilities.
Yeah.
His free fighting, which is one of the few styles that still keeps free fighting with multiple people alive.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was in contact with them, but I decided to do something else in Beijing. I at the time already was training wrestling, so I was like, I just want to go to Li Deshun, which later became my master.
Right.
And that's focus only on that.
Well, it's interesting. Even if you look at, do you know I'm sure you do, the mythical origins of Meihua. They say it started in the Kunlun Mountains thousands of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Know. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, I wonder if there is any actual evidence of where it originates, or I've never really researched Meihua myself. So apart from
well, if you want somebody that is extremely expert in this, I suggest you to contact a Canadian guy called Renmin University.
Okay.
Which was he is an anthropologist, and he did his PhD from Beida, and he researched Meihuaquan for his PhD thesis. Mm-hmm. He is the most knowledgeable person about Meihuaquan that it exists in the West. So that would be a great fit for your podcast.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, send me his name again.
His PhD thesis was field work in the countryside, and he did his field work for a total of 8 years.
Wow.
So in the countryside in the 90s. So 90s or early 2000s.
Oh, that would be interesting. He would be somebody interesting to talk to. Yeah. Look, I know that recall a name of Meihua here. A lineage derived from Han Qichang. Was it Han Qichang?
Han Qichang is the main teacher where all the Meihuaquan of Beijing stems from.
That's what I remember. He's gone. I mean, he's no longer alive.
Oh yeah, Han Qichang died tons of years ago.
Yeah, he's died a long time ago. Did you ever see the Jingcheng Wushu series that I restored and subtitled and put on YouTube? It was one of the first things I ever did 4 years ago. when I was just starting.
No, I did not.
Okay, well, there's a Meihua episode in there, and that was filmed in like the 80s.
Oh, wow.
It's quite early, 80s, 90s. I'll send you the link. You can take a look. It's not very long. It's a couple of minutes long. You can see some people doing a bit of practice. They talk a little bit about Meihua. And it's about Beijing. So the series is based on martial arts and people in Beijing at that time. Styles and people in Beijing at that time. So yeah, I'll send you the link. But yeah, I'd be very interested to talk to the that gentleman you mentioned in Canada. So when you came to Beijing, I mean, for school, first of all, we didn't even talk about that. What was the area? What were you studying? Why? I mean, obviously Beijing. We know why you decided China, but what were you studying at university that and that got you here?
So at the very beginning, so in 2014, when I came the first time, I started to come to China only for Chinese language purposes.
Oh, okay, so it was
So
language.
before studying anything else was just language. It's because when you don't have enough, like a good enough basis in Chinese, you can't really study anything else.
Right.
Or at least that was my, that's how I think. Like, if your Chinese is not good enough, you can't like have a fluent conversation with other people. But it's not just about having a conversation. I think if you want to be a scholar, the most important thing is like being able to express what you think, like your thoughts, like complex ideas, abstract ideas. So I studied in many different like universities in China. I studied in Xiamen University,
Wow.
Renmin University, Shenyang Shifan Daxue. So a lot of different universities.
Well, that's quite far apart, Xiamen, all the way up to Beijing.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of campuses, let's say. But then when I started to actually study a subject in China was for my bachelor degree.
Okay.
This goes, sorry, for my master degree.
Yeah.
My master degree. And it was Chinese philosophy and religion.
I remember.
So I have a master from Renmin University in Chinese philosophy and religion.
And what was that like, studying that as a subject? And did your family think you were crazy?
Well, my family always thought I was crazy.
Okay, good. So we've got something in common there. So
Oh, I mean, yeah, I was like, you know, I think you can relate, like a lot of big fights with my family to let their, like, you know, oldest son go to China on the other side of the world, especially like Italians, like, you know, like you're supposed to stay here, study here, and die here. And I'm like, I don't want to stay here. I don't want to stay here. I want to see different things. I want to see, I mean, my bachelor is in anthropology.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to meet different people, like talking with them. And that was my main drive for learning Chinese. Like, I want to be able to communicate with them.
Right.
Because if you go through like a translation or somebody else is speaking for you, your relationship with that person is always indirect.
Yeah. Yeah, completely.
And the bound, like, yeah, you're not communicating. You're not really knowing the person. And the most interesting conversations I had were always in Chinese. If you talk with somebody in English, most of the times, unless his or her English is like
super
perfect.
level, yeah.
Yeah, and also if it's very good, most of the times they're not comfortable expressing certain things in English.
Yeah, that's true.
They'd rather say it in Chinese. And so at the end of my bachelor, I was like, I want to study religion and philosophy, because that was what I really, really liked. I'm like, I'm good at studying, but I'm particularly good at studying that. Mm-hmm. Because I like trying to understand not just what people think, but what they believe and how they get to believe certain things, and how belief is constructed. What is religion in China? That was one of my favorite topics to research. What is religion in China and philosophy?
Right.
And then I decided, you know, I'll go to Renmin University. And I applied for a big scholarship with the Chinese government. I got it. And studying in Beijing, it was great. Like, I love Beijing.
Yeah.
And I don't love it from like the Western perspective, because like most of the guys or the people that I met in universities, they're always like, you know, party and you go to Sanlitun and you live that Beijing.
You know, I've never,
And
I've never,
that is not
I've
Beijing
never
for me.
been to a nightclub in Sanlitun in my life. You know, because every time I used to come to
Well, I
China
have to
was
say
for
I did.
training. I mean, even before I was living here, when I used to come for training, there's no, you know what it's like. You're sleeping early, waking
Yeah.
up early, killing yourself, and by the end of the day, all you can think about is going back to sleep. You know, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I was quite focused on that. So I never did that. I mean, I never went to those very foreign, frequented areas. So the Beijing you love, you were going to talk about that. What is it?
Well, the Beijing I love is the Beijing of the people.
Yeah.
Like, it's the Beijing that people live. Because Sanlitun is let's call it a very foreign area. Like you
Yeah.
have the embassies there,
Yeah.
so already tells you what kind of area it is.
Mm.
It's interesting. It's nice. You can go have a stroll around. If you like clothes, you can go there all dressed up and having people weirdos taking photos of you, especially if you're a girl. Well, that's true. That's true.
It is true. It still happens.
I'm not saying anything.
It still happens.
Oh yeah, 100%. But once I started being able to talk with people and approach my classmates or friends in Beijing or different part of China, they were always wanted to drag me to the places they wanted to go. So I discovered, I don't know, places like Yugong Yushan, which is a nightclub. It's like a live house in Beijing.
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
For rock concerts.
I've been there a few times.
Yeah, great.
So I saw. Do you know who Mama is? Have you ever heard of the singer?
No.
Do you know Hangai?
Hangai, yeah.
Yeah, I saw Hangai in there. I saw Mama. Mama is from Xinjiang. Also a very interesting singer.
Mama, no.
Yeah, I'll send you some of his music after we're done.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello? Sorry. I couldn't hear you. It was like a very big scratchy noise.
Oh, okay. No, I hear you fine now. It must be the internet connection that you were saying you have a bit of difficulty with. But yeah, no, I'll send you Mama's some music of his. I'm sure you'll like it. He's from Xinjiang. But yeah, so you discovered Yugung Yushan, which I've been to a few times. Great place.
Yugung Yushan. And it's because I love Chinese music, Chinese rock music especially.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big fan of Chinese bands, especially Beijing bands, or singers. And then I discovered temple, and I discovered a school, and I had my friends bringing me around. And then I discovered the small pubs. I don't know, one of my favorite was a small pub near Hulou area. It's called the Beer Guys.
Okay.
It's a tiny ass pub with homemade beer from all over China and abroad. And it's literally you enter, you have 4 seats in front of the beer things, and then upstairs it's a roof, and then you have, I don't know, 5 seats on top, and that's it.
Yep.
And it was one of my favorite places.
Yeah, those places are special like that.
And
those are great little places.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then you go into the Hutong area, and then if you the Beijing food, the luzhu or other things, and you start really getting into the history of Beijing, you see that it's the food is really poor. It's made out of pork, interiors and other things.
Yeah, you mean organs?
And it's very
and
influenced
things, yeah.
from organs, intestines,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff, which I love, by the way. Yeah, come to Beijing and avoid the Beijing kaoya, so the Beijing duck, and go eat the luzhu.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
You're gonna have a tough time. I mean, I've taken a few people to eat stomach and things like that, and intestines, foreigners, and I had to quickly take them to McDonald's afterwards. So, yeah.
Oh my God.
Depends on the person, I suppose.
No.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it like this. If you want to go to McDonald's while I bring you around, I'm gonna leave you in the middle of Tiananmen and then go away. And then see how you get back.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, I used to have people that, they would come with me, we'd go to an event, some sort of a competition or something in China, and they were not living here, but I would take them, and then every day, 3 meals a day, they wanted to know where the McDonald's or the KFC was. And I'm like, why can't you just eat the local food? No. I can't eat that stuff. It's strange. I'm like, it's not... Yeah, I just never understood how people would... Some of them would try it and then they'd be fine with it. But for the most part, like these people that I'm just mentioning, they wouldn't even try it. I'm like, how do you know it's strange? Look, that's a potato. That's a carrot. There's some meat. They're just cooking it differently, but the stuff's the same, and it's delicious. No, take me to McDonald's. Oh, all right. So.
That annoys me so much because it is also one of the reasons why all the times I was in university, I didn't really hang out with foreign student friends because they were all like that.
Really.
And I think if you're look, especially Italians.
Really.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So what would they be eating?
If you're Italian, you only eat like it. I don't know, gongbao jiding. That's it.
Okay. Kung Pao chicken.
Fuck that. I hate it. And I think it shows that you're not interested. Like, you're not willing to open yourself to other cultures, other things.
Well, granted,
why did you come to China?
Well, you're studying anthropology. I don't know what these other guys are studying, but you for sure, I know that.
Yeah, most of the times, no.
You're studying anthropology. For sure, you're interested in cuisine. Cuisine is connected to culture and people. I mean, it's a very major defining part of a civilization. So, of course, you want to try it. If you want to understand, you're going to have to speak the language, breathe the air in the location that they breathe it, and eat the food. Then you can really understand the culture, so. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is something, it's beautiful, what you just said. Like, to understand people, you need to breathe the same air, to eat the same things and experience the same things. Yeah. Like, embodiment is very important, especially in our practices. Yeah. And I thanks to that, I really discovered the beauty of Beijing, which is hidden under the big like skyscrapers and Tiananmen. The true Beijing is with the university students, with the study groups, and what do we do after? Let's go to a concert. What concert? I don't know. 新裤子, which is one of my favorite bands.
New pants.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody listening, go listen to 新裤子, and then you'll say thank you to me, because those guys are crazy. One of my favorite bands, very iconic Beijing rock bands.
Right.
It's Chinese, like the guys in Beijing often say, there's a lot of good bands in China, but there's only one 新裤子.
Yeah, so...
And that... You go.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying... and what you're going to discover is that these practices, like martial art practices, they integrate very differently in people's life compared to how it is here in the West. Here in the West, most people are just like, yeah, I'm gonna go to this kung fu course once a week, two times a week
for an hour,
and that's like going 1 hour, and then it's like it's like going to the gym or maybe swimming. Okay, instead, for most of the people that do it here, it's like an integral part of their life.
Yeah.
It's like I get off work and I do something that makes me feel not just good, but like that makes who I am.
Yep.
Most of the time, these things make up your life. Like, you do this because that's who you are. And it's very, very important.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure like you had the same experience with your teacher.
Yeah, very much. Very much. I mean, I remember him telling me even about his life, like when he grew up as a child, and throughout childhood, even into his adulthood, when he started working, it was always martial arts, right? I mean, this is it. Like, and we think of it like this. You think you do your martial arts when you're feeling good, when there's no other problems, when you have time. No, that's not how it is. Like my teacher came from a poor village. His family moved to Beijing when he was quite young, but they were poor. He started to do martial arts because he had some physical problems, and his his father introduced him to a teacher who started teaching him to try overcome some physical ailments. And he just carried on. And when he started working, it wasn't as if he got some fancy job, he was working in a factory. And what the hours are like in China when you're working from early and you finish, when you finish, there's no messing around. But he would get up early before work, ride his bicycle across to his teacher, train for an hour or more just before work, ride to work, have a full day of work, and then afterward ride back to his teacher, do another hour or two of training, and then go home. And that was just life. It was part of the life, right? So, it's quite interesting. What you just said is quite important, because it is exactly that. It's part of it's like you eat 3 meals a day. You don't question that. That's what you do. Well, this is like eating. They just train every day. That's it.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And they just not like train a little bit. They train their ass off,
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember there's a very interesting documentary about Shuaijiao, about telling the story, or at least part of the story of Master Li. And he, in the video, he's already like in his later years, and he's trying to, keep students training Shuaijiao, and he's like, there's a point that he's driving to Tianjin to meet some like wrestling friends, and he's on the car and he starts kind of crying, saying, I can't do, why I'm not doing more, like this is my life, that wrestling is who I am. I need to, pay respect to my teacher's life and teach more and have more people. And he's like crying because of the situation in which Shuaijiao was.
Right.
And he was never satisfied about his teachings. And that shows you how much these people, how much these practices are important for these people.
Yeah, very much.
Which, by the way, Wang Wenyong was a Manchu guy.
Right.
Which studied from a guy called Jing Baosheng, okay, and the surname Jin, golden, is from Aixinzhi Luo.
Yeah.
So another Manchu.
Another Manchu, of course.
Which tells you a big story.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But this was obviously a China. I don't think I've seen that little documentary. It's Chinese, right? It's not in English.
It's Chinese.
Okay, yeah, I'll look it up. If you have a link, you can send it through to me.
I'll send you.
So how did you then get into? I mean, you didn't only study Meihua. You studied other things once you started coming here.
Yes. Yeah. This is. Yeah. So at a certain point when I was more free when I was in China, because at the very beginning, for example, when I studied in Xiamen University, I was not extremely free. It was summer. I was in the new campus of Xiamen University, which is outside the city. And the campus was completely empty. They were still building it. It was like 50 minutes bus drive from the city.
Oh.
So it was impossible for me to practice anything. I was just studying, hanging out with like friends, and that's it. But then this was in so after I went to China every year since 2014. And I went to Henan in 2016. And in 2017, so the year after, I think it was 2016, I don't remember. I think 2017. I went to Shenyang, which is a capital of Dongbei.
Mukden.
Capital of Mukden. Yeah, of course. Everything lines up, Shenyang.
You went to
Dongbei.
Went to the old
Liaoning.
the Manchu areas, Mukden, which is Shenyang. Yeah.
Exactly.
Old name Mukden in Manchu.
And that was one of the best time of my life.
Really?
Yes, 100%. It was hard, but I still have amazing memories of that year. Shenyang it's a weird city because it's Liaoning province, and Dongbei is very freaking cold.
Yeah.
It's fucking cold.
Yeah.
Okay. And that year, we went down to like minus 30 degrees. It was terribly cold. And I was studying at Shenyang Shifan Daxue, so Shenyang Normal University. And that back then I was only still doing language because that's it. I won a scholarship for language, and that's what I was doing.
Right.
And since the first day I got there, I was like, I need to find somebody to teach me some new things.
Right.
I want to learn some new things. So what did I do? I had no contacts in Shenyang. Nobody. I didn't know anybody. Okay, zero. The first time I went to Liaoning. First time in the city, and you're not gonna ask your teachers if they know like any martial arts person, because what they're gonna do is like they're gonna send you to the like sports coach, and he's gonna have you do taolu or just wushu.
Sport wushu.
And that was like sport wushu, especially because the university had a wushu team.
Yeah,
okay?
most of them do. Yeah.
Most of them, yeah. And I was like, I don't want to do that at all. That's not what I'm interested in. So what did I do? I arrived in Shenyang, I think 2 or 3 weeks before the beginning of the classes. And what did I do? For 3 weeks, I was waking up at 5 in the morning.
Going to parks.
And I went, yes, exactly. I went to every fucking park of the city. I divided the city by areas. Okay, I'm not joking. This is like how much I'm fucked up. I divided the city by areas, and I was like, okay, today I'm gonna do this area. So this and this park.
Right.
At 6 in the morning, I have to be there. And then I was like, after 2 weeks, I was like, man, do they practice here? Am I like going at the wrong time? I don't know. But then one day, I went to this park, and I saw because some of them. So for the guys that never been to China, you can find everything in the parks. Okay, there's always somebody training. Okay, but if you want to find somebody good, it's hard.
Exactly.
Okay, because maybe there's somebody doing like random stuff, and if you just like. If you're fine with the first guy you meet, it's okay. But if you want to, the real deal, it's hard.
Yeah.
And then one day I went to this park, and it's like, I saw this group of people. And first thing they were practicing was 对练. Okay. Which is already pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Partner training with weapons and like empty-handed. But they were all very old, okay, all of them. And then at a certain point, I saw this freaking old-ass grandpa, short as like, I don't know, a chair, extremely rounded, with like, with like deformed arms, that with this weird hat. He picked up a 长穗剑, which is like a long tassel sword.
Yeah.
Okay. He did 2 movements, okay? The movement I still remember is 童子在华, okay? Which is a movement from a set routine of sword. And I saw him doing that, and I was like, this is the person. This is the guy that I want to train with. And I just needed that, okay? The way he picked up the sword, the way the tassel was moving, with 2 movements. He's like an 80-year-old guy. And then I just started watching their older training, okay? They started at 6, and they finish at like around 10:30, 11.
Yeah.
So I was just like standing there watching them, first day, watching them. And then I went again the day after, and then the day after, and the day after. Because it's like, again, it's not that you can just like go there and ask, teach me.
Hey, teach me. Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. And they might say, if they're good, they might say, no, thank you, or like, you're a foreigner, what can you do, or blah, blah, blah. So, and most of the times, if you approach like the teacher and you don't know who he is and stuff, they're either going to get mad, or maybe you're going to say the wrong words. It's not as easy. So I waited until one of the guys came up to me and asked me, oh, I saw that the whole week you come every day and just watch us. And I was like, yeah, I'm like extremely interested. I love what you guys are doing. What is it? Because I saw their movements, but I couldn't recognize anything. And at that moment, like I thought, I was like, I can recognize few styles. It's not my first time in China.
Yeah.
I trained before. I've seen a lot of stuff, but this doesn't look like anything I saw before. And then he told me, oh, we call it Taizu Men or Taizu Quan or Taizu Changquan. I'm like, oh, interesting. And then our exchange finished there. And the day after, he came up to me again, and he asked me to you want to meet our teacher? And I was like, I'm here. I'm ready. 100%.
Yeah.
So first thing we have to make clear for the people that are listening, different parts of China, of course, tend to have different characters. Like people tend to have different characters. And Dongbei people tend to be very harsh.
Very rough.
Because it's cold.
Yeah.
Very rough. Like to fight. Like to drink.
Yeah.
We would like to drink and like to fight. I think for those that do martial arts, it's pretty common. But people from Dongbei are kind of like ready to always argue with somebody. And I came up to this guy, and this old dude, he was like, I'm 182. I think he's like 160 or something. And he looked at me. He was like, what do you do? I was like, I did something before. And back then, in 2017, I just competed in the European Traditional Martial Arts Championship.
Where was it?
So I was like, I'm gonna in Tbilisi.
I was there.
I told you that maybe
I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you judged me, by the way. I think you were one of the judges.
Possibly. I also taught. I don't know if you. I taught a seminar there on Xingyiquan. I don't know if you attended.
I don't know, because we had a very big problem with the Italian team. We didn't have our hotel was super far, and the bus was not arranged.
Oh,
so
yeah, the usual problems.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd love we did. Personally, I didn't even know there was a seminar, by the way.
What's sad?
But we were stuck at the hotel most of the times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
Anyway, back.
Because I always really liked Xingyiquan, especially because I'm interested in the spear. It's very interesting, and the spear is very, very important in Xingyiquan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's the core. It's the heart.
Yeah. And this guy was like, now you show me everything that you know. I was like,
Everything.
Well, what do you mean everything that I know? I'm like, what do you mean everything that I know? It's like, okay, let's start with empty hand routine. Show me.
I hope you did the Macarena.
I'm like, no. I was like, what am I gonna do?
YMCA.
And I asked him, can I warm up a second? YMCA. And he was like, what is warm up? No warm up. Show me the routine. So I did the routine that I brought to the European Championship.
Right.
And he was like, good. You know how to move. And it's like, yeah, I do. I know how to move a little bit. And then he was like, now you show me a weapon. And I was like, okay, what do I show you? Because at the European Championship, I had a sword. But I was training the whole year the spear that I learned, or the past 2 years, the spear that I learned in Henan.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, now show me that. So I picked up a spear, and I did half of the routine, because this routine is like 6 minutes long. It's like, I'm not going to do the whole thing. And he was like, okay, but you're not good. I was like, okay. And he was like, you come tomorrow, and then we start. I was like, okay, let's start. So now I'll tell you a little bit of a backstory, because I told you I divided the city in different areas, and I picked up a park. So what happened was that this park was 1 hour driving from my place.
Oh, man.
Yes. And it was like, you come here at 6 a.m. because we start at 6 a.m. If you come later, you don't train with us, or if you can't make it, that's the time we train.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no arguing. That's,
And you should be there before 6. You can't be there at 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can't be there at 6. So I went there the day after, because school didn't start back in that period. And he looked at me, and he was like, now we learn stances. I was like, stances? He's like, yeah, stances. show me a mabu. I was like, okay, this mabu is not good. It's gongbu. This is not good. Okay, we start from our zhangzhuang. So I started learning the system from the zhangzhuang.
Okay.
And then from there to the basics. So, and this is very interesting because it's very related with Talanquan. So the basics are basically the same.
Okay, very interesting.
We have Po Dao, Tongbei Zhang. Yeah, it's very interesting. That's one of the reasons why I still want to research that. I talked about it with Master Ilya Profatilov.
Okay.
And he told me like this is clearly from Shandong.
Yeah, he's the guy to go to if you want to know
learned
about that stuff. He's researched it so deeply. So he'll be able to tell you very clearly.
Yeah. I mean, he's a human encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Great respect for Master Ilya.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff he did, I don't know who else could say to have done at least something like that.
Yeah, it's quite special.
Very few people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the week after, I remember, so I started training with I was wearing long pants and a t-shirt, and then a week after I was wearing long pants, a t-shirt, and then a sweater. And then school started, and I told him, I can't come every day because my classes start at 8.
Yeah.
And to get here, I need to wake up at 4:30, dress up, take a car. And then because at the time, at 6 a.m., the metro is still closed.
Yeah.
So the metro opens at 7:30, I think. And Shenyang only has 2 lines of metro, and there was there was no way I could make it in time. And the week after, I told him, I'm gonna only come the weekend because I have classes in the morning. But I told him, I have a gym in my university with like a mat, like a competition mat, so I will be able to train every day. He was like, good. We'll review every time what we do, and maybe do new things, but we'll see. I didn't know what he wanted to do. Like, you don't ask for something. He's just gonna be like, we're gonna do this, and that. And the week after, I was wearing a jacket. He told me, Emanuele, it doesn't call me Emanuele because it calls me with a Chinese name. It's like, next week, you need to bring a heavier jacket and gloves. And I was like, I don't have it because I was so smart that I went to Dongbei with a leather jacket. I'm not joking. Wait, the best part still has to come. So I go there next week, and of course he greets you like this. So the routine is this: you go up to him, you say good morning, 早上好, and then you start doing whatever. And every time I go up to him, he was like, start running. I was like, okay. I started running every weekend, okay? And the week after was already -10. And I was like, okay, we have a problem. And he was like, you don't have a jacket? I was like, yeah, I don't have a jacket. The week after, he brought me one of his whole jackets.
Oh, that's nice.
And he was like, this is my gift. Yeah, this is my gift. Of course, I was kind of like, when you put those like t-shirts on big dogs that don't really look like they fit. I was like completely gigantic inside his jacket. But I kept using it, the whole winter. Yeah. Because I only had a leather jacket, and normally, the leather jacket doesn't really move well.
No.
And it's very cold. So every day I woke up, every weekend I woke up at 4:30, and took a car to get there, and training with like -30. And I remember this because he also gave me gloves, okay? Because he kept telling me, get some gloves, and I was like, no, it's fine. Now one day we were working with doubles, like shuangdao.
You need gloves.
Twin sabers. And he was like, you need gloves because this is iron, it's -20.
Exactly.
I was like, no, don't worry. Okay. My finger got black.
Oh, Jesus.
in 1 hour. And he was like, I told you to bring gloves. And then the next time he brought me gloves, and all the other like all old grannies and grandmas. They brought me everything. They gave me like everything. And one day I was sick. I remember it as clearly as it was yesterday. So one day I got sick, and I sent a message to one of them that had WeChat, because he doesn't have WeChat.
Yeah.
He's like 80. His phone is like super old. And I sent her a message saying, I'm sorry, I can't come this weekend. I have very high fever. Because the day before, I was training in the training hall in the university, which it's too big, so you can't warm it
Of
up
course.
completely. So inside it's like -2.
And then you sweat.
But I was sweating.
Yeah.
I sweat. I took my sweater off, and then the day after I had 39 fever.
Yeah.
And 1 hour after I sent her a message, half of the guys from the training park, the park where I was training, showed up with like milk, bread,
Oh, that's
medicine, a sweater. I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, we know you're sick. We're scared that you don't have medicine, that you don't have like a sweater, or you don't have anything. So we brought everything. They brought me everything to the university.
Wow.
So still talking about like people like welcoming
Yeah,
you
exactly.
and stuff. And I learned so much that year. With that guy, I learned a lot of things. I learned Pai Da Gong. I learned free fighting, some routines, spear, fist routines, double sabers. Then the next year that I came back to visit him, I learned Chang Sui Jian.
The one that you saw him doing first,
like-
long-tasseled straight sword.
Yeah, yes, which is extremely complex.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought it was easier, but it definitely is not. But that was a crazy memory for me. Like, I still have very good memory of them, of him, and all my life in the university and in that period.
Well, that's special. I mean, those are very special memories, and it's quite interesting that you also said that, like Ilya said, it's most likely from Shandong, and even the Pai Da Gong. I would be interested to see your Pai Da Gong compared to some that are in the Mantis systems. It's probably very similar.
I mean, the basics that he taught me, starting from the Zhangzhuang to the moving basics, they're basically the same, but like a little more stretched. Like they're longer. They look like more long fistish.
Right.
And this is because the teacher that brought this style to Dongbei, to Northeast, was from Shandong.
Okay.
And it's called Liu Mingshan. Liu Mingshan is there was a period in Chinese history where a lot of workers from Shandong moved to Vladivostok.
Yeah.
To work. He first moved there, and then he opened Wuguan in Harbin in 1924. And then after that, he moved to Shenyang, and that's where he met my teacher. And my teacher right now is the oldest one that learned from him, that is still alive.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting.
And it's clearly the evidence, the connection with Talangchuan is clear, but if you ask them, they don't know about it. Which is, I think, something definitely to research, because it's clear, but they don't talk about it that much. And I think you probably have to go to Harbin, where his son was still practicing.
Okay.
But they changed the routines to make them more competition looking like.
Yeah.
Because in the 60s, competition were a big thing.
Yeah.
So both the son of this teacher and my teacher competed at the national level in the 60s, winning like Liaoning province championships and stuff.
Very interesting.
But of course the routine changes because of that.
Yeah, but did he continue teaching it like that, the way he changed it, or did he also tell you?
Oh, he said, no. He says like this. So, of course, depending on who you are, he teaches you differently.
Ah, okay.
So, my teacher, he only lived by teaching martial arts.
Okay.
So he was a teacher in a high school and university team. And he was like, when they call me to teach there and they wanted like competition routines and stuff, well, I said, yeah, I'm gonna teach you. But he changed everything. He changed the whole routine. He made it different because like I'm not gonna give you my things just because of like you're giving me money.
Right.
But when he teaches, he tells you, no, this comes from this thing, and that's why we use this other movement. And if you compare it with the harping, it's clear that there's some differences.
Okay.
And the harping, they definitely changed a lot of things, and he did too sometimes. So the most number one thing to do for this is a comparison between harping and Shenyang.
Yeah, of course, that would make sense. Now you said it was they called it Taizu.
Yes.
Have you experienced any of the other branches of Taizu throughout China? Do you see any similarities there?
Sorry, Byron, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I said, have you experienced or seen of any of the other Taizu styles within China and compared them to yours?
So I saw a couple, but never trained them,
Yeah.
and they look different. Taizu is a very common name
exactly.
in China,
Yeah.
especially for martial arts. So there's like at least 5 styles that are called Taizu Quan, or Taizu Men, or Taizu Changquan. For example, there's even a form in Shaolin Quan. It's called Taizu Changquan.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't see any relations with the other styles. I see more connections with the local styles of Shandong, especially Dengxian area.
Okay.
So very specific. It's a very specific place for Tawang Quan, and I think the highest amount of similarities I see it with Meihuaquan Quan.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Like the movement of the arms, basics, the grabs, the punches, the approach to fighting, the two-person drills. It's basically that.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially because it changes the level of the strikes from the form to the two-person strikes.
Oh.
And right now it's thought very long, but it's not supposed to be that long. And that's why they call it Duanda, Changquan Duanda.
Oh, I get it. Right. Okay. That's also quite a common saying as well.
Yeah.
They'll say that. Even, I mean, a lot of people think that this Taizu is a specific thing, but as you said, it's quite a few styles that use this name. Even down in the south, when you look at Wuzu Quan, because it's made up of five things, one of them is Taizu.
Exactly.
Taizu's in there too. So it's a very common name. And it probably harks back to what we spoke about earlier with attributing it to something, whether it's mythological, historical, or something like that, to give it some, honor, or to, some other function like that. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Then you got on.
More than like having actual roots. Most of the times, these things tells you about like purposes. There's this kind of like giving people or giving the style more recognition, not really about their origin.
Exactly.
It's like because this Taizu, they linked it to Song Taizu, so to the founder of Song Dynasty.
Yeah.
But I believe it could, be mainly because I think that the style can be traced to the early Qing, and it was not really a nice period for Han people.
Yeah.
And I think they named after Song Taizu because Song Taizu is a very prominent figure in Han history.
Well, it's the same reason why you see most of the styles being crystallized around that time, and you see very similar attributions for the exact same reason. Anti-Manchu, anti-conquering Qing, pro-Han, histories and mythologies, and attributing it to heroes of the past in that regard. That's very common. I mean, even UFA. I mean, he's Song Dynasty as well. So it's the same reasoning why he was attributed as well to that time.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. So then you got on to Shuaijiao, and how did you get into that?
Oh yeah. So I started getting to know Shuaijiao. So I got to know Shuaijiao the first time around 2016 in Italy. And as I was mentioning in the chat we had with Lavell, I always practiced Chinese traditional martial arts before. I went to China to train with the other guy, and while I was with him, I met different other masters, and I saw a bunch of different styles.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Shuaijiao in Italy for the first time. I read about it, and it was like Chinese wrestling, and something like kind of like popped in my mind. It was like, wrestling? I was like, what is it? And then I looked up some videos, and I met these people practicing what they call the Shuaijiao. They call it Shoubo, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole other topic.
Yeah. That comes through
And I was
somebody
like,
specific.
this-
I mean, that naming and
Exactly.
comes from, and he's in France, correct?
It comes up. He's in France, yeah. Yuan Zumo is in France. Great skills. You can't deny it. Great skills, amazing skills, great knowledge. But when he talks about Shuaijiao history, is a little weird. Especially thinking about who his teachers is and who his teachers' teachers is. But whatever.
Well, go on. Who are they? I mean, we've spoken about this before.
Oh man, Yuan Zumo's teacher is Zhou Sibin, which is a very prominent figure for both boxing and wrestling in Shanghai.
And you see the
which
same
was
boxing.
The main
you see the same boxing and wrestling thing in the Republican era with Buanfu. Same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
100%, because he was a student from somebody of that period.
Yeah.
And Zhou Sibin was one of the main contenders of Chang Dongsheng, which is of course an extremely prominent figure in Shuaijiao.
Yeah.
But so Yuan Zumo often, like everybody, talks about how much Chinese wrestling is ancient, like 4,000 years old, and Han Dynasty or whatever, and before.
The usual.
But then his teacher, Zhou Sibin, when he came to Italy, I never get the chance to meet him because it was like I was a kid, maybe not, I was not even born when they brought him here. He had them like train book too. One time he brought even like book jackets.
Oh really?
And then another time, yeah, I'm not joking. Another time, Yuan Zumo brought his guys to Inner Mongolia to wrestle.
Oh, very interesting.
I'm not joking. I'm not joking. And Zhou Sibin's teacher, do you know who he is?
Oh, go ahead.
Tong Zhongyi.
Exactly. A Manchu.
Which doesn't really look Chinese, right?
A Manchu who learned from a
what's
Mongolian,
going on here?
apparently.
Yeah, well, learned from a Mongolian. So, it's interesting. And Yuan Zumo, when he got to France, he started to develop this new system that he called Shoubo. Shoubo is a mix of kickboxing and wrestling with the jacket, which I think looks very cool. The idea is really cool.
Well, it's a good bridge, don't you think?
The intent behind it.
It's a good bridge.
Well, 100%. You go.
No. I was going to say it's a good bridge. I mean, even the name Shoubo, because a lot of times you'll see this in the history of Shuaijiao being saying, oh, it was called many things, including Shoubo, or Chinese martial arts was also called many things, including Shoubo. So you see this repeated sometimes. But actually, Shoubo is just a name for a type of combat format, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's
the combat format has.
He's just going back to that concept, actually.
Exactly. He's going back in time, trying to, make something new that looks back to what certain practice might have looked like in the past. But he always keeps the jacket.
Yeah.
Okay. And the jacket it's like it's not related to Han wrestling, Xiangpu or whatever. It's not practiced with the jacket. It tells us about different culture.
Exactly.
And so yeah, I met with the group of Shuaijiao here, and I looked at it and I was like, "Fuck, this doesn't look Chinese." I mean, I mean, I mean, I was like, "No, it doesn't." Like, okay, there's like throws in different Chinese styles.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. Okay, but the way you throw and the level of technique involved in those throw is different. The way you move is different. The concept is different. The basics of Chinese styles, the emphasis in Chinese styles is different. Like although all the styles of Chinese martial arts don't have routines, just like sets of movements, which is basically what it is with Shuaijiao.
Yeah.
But again, they're done differently. The structure of the body is different. And although like right now you have, especially nowadays, you have people teaching the basics of Shuaijiao almost as if it is a Chinese martial arts, okay? Which is, I don't want to give a judgment, but it's far from what it is. It's far from the way it was practiced even 10 years ago. So let's not be fooled by Gong Fu Jiao or whatever. Gong Fu Jiao is something that you can like think about as your wrestling is good, so you have technique, you have dedication, you put in the time, but overemphasizing, thinking about the structure and this and that with Shuaijiao is not really.
It's not gonna help you.
No.
Yeah, it's not.
No, I mean, it's not gonna help you, but it's not even how it was taught.
Yeah, exactly. So you saw this thing. You saw, wow, this doesn't look Chinese.
I saw this thing.
This doesn't look Chinese. I've got to learn it. Is that how it went?
Yes. It is. It's like I saw that, and well, I loved at first sight. I loved it. I didn't care what it was, what it wasn't, how they were practicing it. I love this. Like, you grab on a guy and you throw him on the ground. Okay? It's fantastic. I mean, I'm a simple person. But I had to leave for China a couple of months after.
Okay.
And I went to Shenyang. And at first in Shenyang, I tried to find somebody for wrestling. Like while I was looking for people in the parks, I was in contact with a few people around asking for, do you know anything about wrestling? And I found a group super far away from me. I never had the chance to meet them. And he was like, you come, you pay, and this is what we do. And I was like, it doesn't sound great. So I end up not doing, because this guy was not even a coach. He supposedly was a guy that did some competition.
Okay.
But I saw he was mainly a judoka.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, no, thank you. And then after that, I came after Shenyang, the period, long period in Shenyang. I came back. Oh, of course, I was asking my teacher in Shenyang about wrestling, and he said like he knows what it is, but he never practiced. But every time because I went back to visit him many times, and even after I started practicing and focusing more on Shuaijiao, which he never said anything about. Like he was not like sad, because I was still keeping like, the things I learned from him, and when I went to visit him every time I was just doing that. Yeah. And he always encouraged me to study new things and fight.
That's good.
He was always scared that I get into like club fights every time. But I was like, no, nothing happened. And one day he was like, when you throw somebody on the ground with a jacket, okay, the moment you throw him on the ground and you go onto him, okay, you have to wait that he breathes out, and once he breathes out, you just push him down. So he was like, so that blood comes out of his mouth, and then you don't have to wrestle anymore. I was like, okay.
Oh, that's okay. Nice.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm gonna try it, but thank you. And so when I came back, I kept doing Taizu Chuan, but I also kept studying back and forth with this other group. When every time they had like a meeting or a seminar or whatever, I went there and trained and
Okay.
tried to do stuff. And then on the internet, I started to see some videos of this guy teaching in a university gym, huge university hall, yellow mat, and this guy with a super strong Beijing accent teaching throws from like the smallest detail to the like to the final throw
Yeah.
itself in literally 1 minute, and then throwing everybody and having his students doing. And then I saw like a bunch of these videos for every technique, and he was like explaining everything super easy, and like it was, you could see he was not keeping anything for himself. And I was like, who's this guy? And then I found out, well, this guy is named Li Deshun, and he teaches here in Shoudu 体育学院. I don't know how to translate. 首都体育学院 is like a capital academy for sport in Beijing. And then a year after, I applied for my master's degree in Beijing.
Yeah.
Well, let's say I could choose between two different universities, and I decided to go to Beijing because of wrestling. Let's not tell my parents, but that's the reason why I decided to go there. And I got to Beijing. I moved in. This time too, I got to Beijing way before classes started. And the second week, the first week I was too busy. Second week, I just showed up at their place. I showed up because I knew they were training at night.
Yeah.
I showed up, me training, and I said, hello, I'm a Lao Wai. I want to train.
I'm a Lawai.
then-
Like they didn't know you were a foreigner when they saw your face. You had to tell them, "Hi, I'm a foreigner."
No. Yeah, exactly. And then, so the teacher didn't even come to me, of course. And the main coach came to me, which Lavell also met, a crazy guy called Manu. He came to me and he was like, okay, do you want to wrestle? Like, yeah. And the fact that they train inside a university gym, they had to pay rent
of course.
at night. So it's like, we have to pay this fee every month. And I'm like, okay. So I paid for like a year in advance. I paid the whole year on the spot the first night. And he was like, well, okay, well, this is the jacket, and start training with us. And then everything went downhill from there. Like, I remember at the beginning I was doing the Jibengong with Gongbu and focusing on that. And the teacher came up to me and was like, did you do Wushu before? And I was like, yes, I did. Well, it shows you move well, but don't think too much about it. And then I started from the back, the last row when they were doing Jibengong. And then slowly I moved to the one row in the front and then another row in the front. And then by the end of it, the teacher asked me to guide the lessons every week.
Oh, wow.
At least the whole basics falling until the beginning of
Technique.
the Shijian.
Shijian,
He was
sparring.
technique and fighting. Technique and fighting, he was the one teaching. But the rest, he was like, you go, 你代课, so you guide.
You lead the
training.
class, yeah.
And yes, I lead the class. And it was weird at the beginning. I was super nervous the first time he asked me. Because like I thought I didn't understand what he asked me. I was like, well, why is he asking? And then the beginning, the people were not super happy.
Of course.
Or especially like the first time I wrestled there, because I told everybody, I was like, I have no experience. I never wrestled before, but I could move, you know.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, you did wrestle before. It's like, no, I did not. Like I did some stuff in Italy, but it's not even comparable to this. And one time, this was before he asked me to lead the class.
But you know, before you get onto that, I must say though that like if you have a good solid base in, you know, the foundational aspects of Northern Chinese martial arts, you have a good base actually. So I can understand why some people, if you can move and you've got a solid base, they'll think that you might have wrestled before, because you know it's not like somebody who's done nothing. You have a stable base, you have an understanding of weight distribution, you know how to root yourself a little bit and move, etc. So it does help, of course. It does translate.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, you generally move better than the normal
Yeah.
person. Your coordination is better. Your legs are stronger, which is very
Yeah.
important.
So yeah.
And I remember at the beginning, one of the guys, I was wrestling, so we were doing the 实战, the fighting part, wrestling part. And just I grabbed this guy and he was grabbing me, and then all of a sudden this guy fucking slapped me in the face. Just like I was like what is going on? I literally raised my head. He literally slapped me in the face, like you slap a motherfucker out of a pub, okay? And then I raised my head and I looked around and nobody was saying anything. And I was like, well, I don't know. But then I was like, well, okay, you slapped me, but I can't slap you back because, you know, I'm sure everybody else is going to be on my back.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I get it. You want to fight? I just slammed it as hard as I could on the ground. And after, I remember he bounced off the fucking ground that day. And after that, he became one of my best friends there. But I still don't get, like, why do you have to do that?
Well, some people are like that. And it's interesting you also say I've also become very friendly with people that have had that kind of attitude with me, and then yeah, you just sort them out, and then suddenly, I don't know what happens. The wall breaks down between you and you become good friends. I've had that before too.
Yeah, it's weird, but definitely an interesting memory. I was not mad after that because I'm like, you know, you're doing martial arts. It's not good to have that kind of attitude,
Yeah.
but in the end, you're not doing ballet.
Yeah.
So I get somebody might get, like, you know, mad or something. And that is a moment that I remember very clearly. And then after, I remember I was guiding the class, and you know, a few new people sometimes started to come, and they were like, why we came to a Chinese wrestling class or training and there's a fucking foreigner teaching here? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, he told me it's like his fault. I didn't do anything. And that's it. That was like very interesting. I met a lot of people. We had a lot of training and a lot of baijiu after training, which is devastating. I would not recommend it.
Well, it's one of the important.
And,
it's one of the important parts of Chinese kung fu culture, particularly in the north, unfortunately. But it is what it is, and you know, I remember in the beginning as well, the times when we'd have to drink, and there's a big group get together with a martial art family here, and in the beginning I used to feel, oh man, I don't like to drink all this, but actually it's some of the better memories I have is those get-togethers and those occasions, honestly. So you'll look back on them with you know, fond memories later on, for sure. For sure.
Well, I'll tell you one a very funny memory of that period with my wrestling friends. So Saturday night, I kept we had training 3 to 4 times a week.
Okay.
And Saturday generally is the biggest training. And on Saturday, I always had a study group with my supervisor in the university that started every weekend at 5 and ended around 10 p.m. So that day I just kept it because I just wanted to go wrestle. And that day we wrestled a ton, a lot of shit. We were super sweaty. And then we decided to go eat some like kautuar, so some
Kebabs.
Meat after, like grilled kebabs. Yeah, grilled meat after. I think it was already kind of like around June because we went to this restaurant without wearing any shirt. So the gym didn't have like changing rooms that we could use, and didn't have any showers, so we went straight from the practice, completely sweaty, shirtless. We raided this restaurant. Of course, it's a Hui restaurant because the teacher is Hui.
A Muslim restaurant,
And
yeah.
no matter if there's any Muslim restaurant, and no matter if the other guys are non-Muslim, it's a Muslim restaurant. That gives you baijiu. But
Yeah, but that's common here too. It's quite strange, isn't it? It's quite strange. You'll see the...
It is
Because,
strange.
I mean, personally, I prefer to go to halal restaurants here in Beijing. I like the Hui cuisine, firstly. Secondly, I have a bit of a... Well, I like to ensure... If I don't know the restaurant, then I'll go to a halal Hui restaurant in Beijing. That's just usually how I am. But anyway... Yeah, but you'll always find that they'll have the big halal sign outside, but when you go inside, they're selling alcohol. So, yeah.
They are selling alcohol, but most of the times, Hui, even if they don't practice,
Religious,
they're not actively Muslim, the religious, they still don't drink. But we drank because like my coach didn't come because he had to go home But I went with all the guys and we drank a ton of baijiu. I was like completely destroyed. Okay, like no water after training, just baijiu and kaochuar and raw. Do you say raw like garlic?
Yeah.
Because it's common here, especially in Beijing. It's common.
Well,
and you eat it without chewing it.
Well, you do chew it a bit.
Just throw it in your mouth.
You chew it a bit. I don't know why.
They were like, you don't have to chew it.
I don't know why you're swallowing it whole. You should chew it a little bit.
Well, they told me not to chew it. So I ate basically an entire garlic by myself and eating kaochuar, and I drank a ton of baijiu, and then I drank beer. And then I have a particular passion for pidan, so the black egg, how you call it in English? 100 years.
I think they call it
egg?
1,000-year-old egg.
1,000-year-old egg, which is like a fermented egg, which is extremely tasty. But I ate too much of that, so I came back to my dormitory. Back then, my roommate was a French guy.
Yeah.
God bless him. He's like he was my angel when I was in China. Okay. One of the best person I've ever met in China. So, and I came back, I think it was like 2 a.m. or something. And I was super talkative. He was sleeping because he sleeps early. He wakes up super early, like 5. And I wanted to talk with him. So I started talking and stuff. It was like, man, I want to sleep. Then all of a sudden I fell asleep. Okay. But what happened is that the last thing I remember is that I woke up and he was screaming. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Why is he screaming? And then I realized I was sitting on the bed, puking on the floor, completely on my legs, on my feet, on my flip-flops, and then I don't remember anything else. Okay, to tell you how good this guy was, he put me to sleep. He cleaned the floor, washed my flip-flops, and cleaned the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And then the day after, he told me, I will never eat pidan again.
Oh, my God.
I was like... Okay.
I was gonna ask when you were saying like you ate all that meat, you drank all that baijiu, then you had beer, and then you had a whole bunch of 1,000-year-old eggs. I was gonna say I can imagine what kind of projectile vomit you must have made that night. And there you go. You just told us. So yeah, mental note to self: do not get drunk on baijiu and beer afterwards, and then eat 1,000-year-old eggs. Oh, don't forget the garlic. I'm sure it must have been very violently explosive vomit with all of that.
Terrible. Do you want another story like this?
Not really, but go ahead.
This is this is when I was in Henan. Okay, 2016. So what I didn't tell you before is that the teacher that was teaching me Meihuaquan in Henan was also a master in Zuiquan.
Drunken boxing.
And I'm not joking. It's a drunken boxing. Yeah. Okay, which was very proud of. Shaolin version of drunken boxing. But he was actually an alcoholic. Like, we were drinking every day after training, every day. And he wanted me to follow him and drink with his friends. So 6 hours training every day, no shower, no water, going to drink every day.
It's part of training.
Every day. Oh yeah, but at a certain point, I really thought I'm gonna die here. Like, I can't take this. It was so bad that his wife started to tell him like not to have me drink because I'm gonna die. Okay, it's like I only survived because of his wife. And one day I went to meet his like longtime friends, and we were at this like small like restaurant on the street, and I was like, I can't like not drink tonight, so I have to. And I remember they had me eating this fried chan. Chan are like a giant. It's like an insect that makes a weird sound.
It's a cicada. It's a cicada.
Oh, okay.
Like
Cicada. Okay.
In summer. It's the thing that makes that sound.
Exactly. I ate a ton of that. And then I was like, I need to eat something solid to take all this alcohol because I'm going to die. So they brought this special like egg cake, okay, that was super thick. I was like, well, this is going to be perfect. Like the egg cake is going to absorb all the alcohol and I'm not going to die. So I ate a ton of that. There was only one problem that I forgot and I didn't think about. That egg cake was full of garlic. Full of, again, garlic.
I think
so that night,
I think I'm seeing a pattern here. There's the pattern with
exactly.
The pattern with you is you get really drunk on Baijiao, then you eat something to do with eggs and garlic, and then that's the recipe for disaster with you. So I'm seeing a pattern.
Yeah. And but the story is not over here. So my teacher gets even more drunk than I was. So I had to drag him back home. Okay? Literally, I dragged him home. With him trying to tell me where to go because he didn't want to get a taxi. Okay? Okay. We got home, finally, safe. I would go to sleep. At a certain point in the night, I feel something coming up my stomach. I'm like, oh my God, what is it? It was the garlic pushing. I literally felt the garlic pushing up.
Okay.
And I remember the scene. I like said, like I'm lying down on my bed. Okay, I stand up and I puke straight in front of me, like a water, like a
waterfall,
like a fountain on the fucking like wardrobe.
Oh, no.
Completely. And I was lucky enough that right in front of me there was like a trash bag, so I puked in front of me on the wardrobe and on the fucking thing, on the trash bag. And I had to wake up in the morning to clean the mess because I puked everywhere.
Nice.
I was like, I cleaned everything, packed it, and then went downstairs, I threw it away, and then I went back to sleep.
Well, I'm just going next time you're in Beijing, whenever that is, if this place ever opens up again. But the next time you're in Beijing and we go out, we are not drinking and eating garlic at the same time. So I'll remember that. Just remind me if I forget.
Will we be able not to? That's the question.
That is a good question. That is a good question. I want to talk a little bit more about your teacher, Li Deshun. What's he like? And you still obviously consider him to be your teacher. I know you want to come back and train.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's...
So, yeah, he's definitely my teacher. Like, right now, as I think I mentioned a couple times before, I mainly focus only on wrestling. It's been like since 2017, 2016, mainly on that. Although I keep some of the other practices on the side, but I only focus on wrestling. Li Deshun is a interesting person. So not talkative. He's not somebody that likes to talk. He was considered the last champion of Shuaijiao generation because in 1997, Shuaijiao was erased from the national games. And he was a champion during the 80s and 90s. When he was younger, it was like everybody when wrestling was still a big thing in Beijing. he was on the mouth of everybody. Everybody knew in Beijing who Li Deshun was. Him together with some few other guys, of course.
Yeah.
But he was like the number one guy. Like I remember another guy, another teacher from Beijing. He's like younger than him, Wang Dongqing. He's always tells the story of that time he was able to beat Li Deshun. To tell you like what kind of person this guy was. So Master Li comes from a family of wrestlers. Okay, he learned wrestling from his dad together with his two brothers. He's the oldest brother. His two brothers, Li Deren is a national champion in freestyle wrestling.
Yeah.
And his other brother only did Chinese wrestling, but none of them were as good as him. And his dad was a kind of a harsh teacher. He always like tells that. One time he came back home and Li Deshun lost a game, and his dad like straight up like slapped in the face. It's like, how can you dare to lose a match?
Wow.
You can't lose matches. So that's the kind of training he had. Right now, I'm not sure if he's still alive. His dad.
Yeah.
He should be quite old.
Who did his dad learn from?
But he got softer with the years. This is interesting. This is a story. So his dad learned from. So first, let's start like with this. The gym and the group he opened in Beijing is called Shuaijiao. Okay, Shuaijiao Jiaoguan. So the two heroes or twin heroes wrestling place. Let's call it place. This is important because his dad's teacher were the guys that Beijing wrestling history remembers as the Yao Shangxiong, okay, which means that Yao is a surname, Yao and three heroes, which was a group of three brothers, all with the surname Yao. And the oldest one of them was one of the last Puhu of the Shangpuyin. Okay. So his wrestling line comes from a line of Hui wrestlers because the Yao brothers were all wrestlers. Were all Hui, all Hui, and his dad was Hui, and I think they were from the Red Banner.
Okay.
Plain Red Banner.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. There's very few information about this. And you can see compared to other lineages that it's clearly derived from the Shangpuyin in certain ways, in the way they do the movements. So of course we have to remember that what came out of the Shangpuyin, the basics, the techniques, they did not look identical. People teach basics and techniques in different ways. Okay. So it's possible to see, for example, the lineage of Tong Zhongyi, although he was not from the Shangpuyin, but it's clear his basics, how they are, whether they were influenced from other things. If you look at, for example, Li Baoru, his basics and his techniques look in a certain way because he learned from different people. But there's a background, there's a consistency that is clear, and that is also clear for the Master Li Deshun, but they're a little different. For example, the overemphasis in the front foot when you turn and you do Da Lai Zhuang, okay, which is not present in Li Baoru's lineage. And the amount of how far away your feet are when you do that. So Li Deshun comes from a line of wrestlers. So his dad was a wrestler that studied from wrestlers that came from the Shangpuyin. So just going back 2 generations from him, you are already inside the Shangpuyin. And among those that still practice that, and the last that were able to experience an interesting part of the Shangpuyin. And it's interesting again, or what we should have people pay attention to is that Hui learns from Hui in this case.
So Hui is in Muslims learn from Muslims.
Muslim learns from Muslims. So He's a Muslim, Chinese Muslim. His dad is a Muslim. His dad learned from Muslims.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at Wang Wenyong. Okay, Wang Wenyong is not openly, but we know that he was a Manchu.
Yeah.
Okay, because his parents, or at least his family, comes from a generation of Zheng Huangji. So the plain yellow banner. Yes. So he was a Manchu. Although like you don't see it mentioned anywhere, okay, that he is. But when you say his family was from, or his family, in Chinese you say 入关, so was part of the imperial system from the plain yellow banner, it tells you that he was a Manchu. Of course. Okay, because of the banner.
The banners are the Qiren.
And then,
banner people are the same as
Qiren.
the Manchus, so they're interchangeable, these terms.
Yes. And his teacher, okay, was Jin Baoshang, and Jin Baoshang was a Manchu. So again, Manchu learns from Manchu.
Right.
Okay, this is important. The only exception being Li Baoru. Li Baoru, you will not find it mentioned anywhere. Like you do not find it mentioned anywhere online that Wang Wenyong was a Manchu. But Li Baoru is a Manchu. Okay, that comes from a bordered red banner family. Okay, sorry, bordered
Yeah,
white.
I remember it was white.
Zheng Baiqi, border white banner family. But he tried to learn with as many people as he could.
Yeah.
Okay, so he learned from Man Baozhen, which was a Hui. He learned from Bao Shanling. Again, Bao Shanling was a Manchu.
Yeah.
He learned from Bu Enfu, which was probably a Mongolian. But he tried very actively to learn from as many people as he could, especially because he's younger than Wang Wenyong. So we're talking a different generation. So what I believe could be said is that ethnicity might play a part sometimes for lineages, especially in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Why? Because let's say you're a Muslim from the Shampuyin and the government, they're dismantled, okay? Where do you live? You live in the area of your banner, okay? And an area that is probably a Hui area. So you're only gonna have exchanges with Hui people.
Yeah.
So of course, you're gonna teach to other Muslims. This thing gets a little more blurry with time, but it's clear in the beginning. So yeah, Li Deshun is a very not talkative person.
Well, we see the same thing with Chang Dongsheng because he studied with people that were learning in the mosque street. So the people that were in the mosque street were all Muslims in that area. So that's where they lived and that's where they trained and they taught each other.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I think needs some further research.
Yeah. So you should.
And Li Deshun is an interesting guy.
Yeah.
That like when he told us like when he used to have matches, most of the time back then you know like who you were going to face. Okay, you knew who you were going to face, and he was like, okay, I need to face this guy, and he would stay awake the whole night thinking about how this other guy wrestles and how I can beat this guy. Okay, this is the amount of craziness that like those guys have when it comes to wrestling. And Li Deshun was famous for being able to pull off Xiao Dehe from every grip.
Oh, really?
Every grip he had, Xiao Dehe, he was taking you down.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you still keep in contact with him now?
I mean, I think... Yeah. I'm in contact with them almost every week. They sent me a banner from the gym that they made, new banner with Italy written on the bottom.
Oh, very nice.
Because I started to teach some people here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm in contact, and they're always like, when are you coming back? We need to train, and you need to, do research. We're like supporting you and all that kind of stuff. But I never talked about my research ideas with Li Deshun, only with one of my friends there.
Okay.
Because it's not super, like, it's complicated. You need to talk about these things like face to face. You need to introduce certain topics
In person.
very carefully. Yes.
He's actually in the first episode
very
of my Hidden History of Shuaijiao episode series. I just pulled a little part. It's like, I don't know, 15 seconds from a documentary.
I'll tell you about that. It's very interesting. So there's 2 documentaries with him, featuring him. A short one that is the one that you pull those 15 seconds from, that says 中国式摔跤有4000多年的历史. Okay. It says Chinese wrestling has 4,000 years old history. And that's the only time I've ever heard him mention that. Because if you take a look at the other documentary on him, which is like an hour long, and it's called 再见交情. The documentary starts by talking about what Chinese wrestling is, and there's no mention of 1,000 years old. There's only mention of Manchu and Qing dynasty. It says clearly it starts from.
Well,
there.
I know that he himself is not like spending time researching. He's like many of the Chinese martial artists, or Shuaijiao people rather, that are focused on wrestling. They don't have the ability or the interest to really research so deeply. So a lot of the time they'll repeat what they're told anyway. So, it shouldn't be held against somebody, It's just, okay, well, this is what we're told. We kind of know this and that's basically it. Let's wrestle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100%. Like, I think you pulling those 15 seconds, like, it's important to show that generally when you talk about Chinese wrestling, that's the normal narrative.
Exactly.
Even for somebody that might not believe it, but that's normal. I call it in the research that I'm trying to do, I'm calling it the mythology of Shuaijiao. Because it's something that you think it's true, or maybe you were said it was true, but you might or might not believe it's true.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and on the contrary,
go ahead.
You have other people like Libo Ru, which are very open about talking sometimes of the fact that this is not really. This is a Mongolian and Manchu thing. It's very clear about this.
Yeah.
And when there's a video of him talking about it, and every time he mentions, 我们也有那个水裙, he calls it 水裙. 水裙 is the skirt that you see wearing by some Mongolian wrestlers, made out of 3 colors. In Chinese, it's either called 水裙 or 菜裙, so collar skirt.
Right.
And every time he mentions woman, I do believe he's talking about Manchu. It's not woman 摔跤人, woman 满族人.
Right. Yeah, which is his actual background.
Yes.
Well, look.
But these are complex stuff to understand. Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. I think we're gonna plan to do a second part. We can talk more about Shuaijiao stuff. We said maybe we'll do another follow up with Lavell. We can get into that stuff too. But I want to ask you, 100%. Your plans was to come back here. Now you're not able to come here because we don't know when China will be opening up, even for people to come back and study and things like that. But what are your plans? I mean, you said you're teaching now, so. What are your plans in the interim? You're applying to go do your PhD somewhere in Italy in the meantime.
Yeah, so my life was very much disrupted by this whole pandemic thing that happened, everyone. Which I believe everybody, like everyone, but so I worked the past 7 years to get to China and study. And I had all my contacts there, all my plans for the future there, and I still have all my belongings there. So, and I was planning to do a PhD there, and because you have the only Qing History Research Center, you have it in my university. Yeah. There's no other Qing History Research Center in Beijing, not even in Beida, not in Tsinghua. There's nobody teaching Manchu anymore in Beida, in Tsinghua. But I can't do that, and therefore I decided to try and apply to a university here in Italy to do my research, which will focus on wrestling and identity and the evolution of identity
Oh, very good.
related to wrestling from the Qing dynasty to today.
Very good.
But I'm struggling because the application for this is going on right now, and I'm still not sure if I'll be able to get in because in Italy there's nobody teaching actively Manchu right now, so I might struggle to find a supervisor. But I hope I'll be able to start.
Well, hopefully you can, but
training wise,
it might, China might open up. Who knows? Who knows what happens in the next 6 months?
I don't believe so. I think China is going to open up more likely around 2024-ish, 24, and mid 24, late 24.
I've heard 25 to be honest, but
so
exactly.
Unless something major happens, but I don't know. Training wise, I keep training. I have a small group here. More than teaching, I would like to think myself as somebody that introduced people to wrestling, not really as a teacher, because to me the teachers are people like my teacher or Li Ru, or some extent even Lavell. Like skill wise, everybody needs to recognize that this is not a normal dude. Okay, I don't care what do you think, because most of the times people struggle to recognize other people talents or even achievements, and to me it's very important. I'm learning with him a book too. I'm trying at least, and I'm trying to get more people to know what you did with the hidden history of Shuaijiao, which I really very much appreciated. I think that was a very needed thing to be put online, and I think you did a great job, and you spent a ton of hours on something that is really worth watching.
Well, I'm glad, like especially coming from wrestlers like you and Lavell, that you say that, so it makes me feel that the time wasn't wasted. But look, I'm looking forward to what you do in the future with regards to this particular topic as well, and hopefully there's a lot more to come in terms of this opening up the true history, the beauty of the art and its origins and its real story. So let's see where it goes. Let's see.
Yeah, finger crossed.
2 weeks later.
All right, Manu. So we're doing another recording. I know it's going to sound weird to the listeners because they will hear it all at once. But when we recorded our initial podcast, my building was scheduled to have an electricity shortage that evening, turning off for some reason. But that never happened. So we actually cut the discussion short for no reason. So we're carrying on with it today because there were a couple of topics that we didn't really talk about that I thought are very important. In particular, your Shuaijiao teacher, Li Deshun, and your experiences training with him. So, welcome back.
Oh, yeah, that's quite interesting because, so I mentioned before that I started to get involved with Shuaijiao around 2015 to 16, around that time. Like, involved means like I started to know what it was. I started to go to some people that were practicing it here in Italy. And then when I moved to China, so I started like increasingly doing it more and more. And then when I moved in China in 2018, I was like, I applied for a scholarship, and then I had to choose which school. So like a couple choices. And at the time I was already like, okay, I'm going to Beijing, and then I want to completely shift my focus on only Shuaijiao, like just that. And it's curious because like I started to know about Li Deshun from YouTube, and there's like some YouTube like videos. One is a big documentary on him that some like guys from the film school in Beijing made about, and it's called I think 再见交情, which means goodbye wrestling feelings.
Right.
Or
I've seen that.
The 交情 is actually a very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
concept.
Well, we'll get into that. But that documentary I saw a long time ago. I don't know which year it was made.
It's probably 2016, I think.
Right.
I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, yes. Carry on about
There's
Jiao
that one. Jiao is just, I think, something that a lot of wrestlers can relate. Like, is that feeling of wanting to wrestle and what wrestling gives you that is very interesting. It's like most of the times when you learn Shuaijiao, you have to understand the technique. What happens is that you have to, what they say is 照感觉,
Yeah,
which means
exactly.
like to find the right feeling for it. And it's curious because like a lot of I don't want to say a lot of people, but like I think some people that don't do wrestling sometimes are like, oh, do you have to know so many techniques and like it's so complicated. In the end, like you'll study a lot of techniques, but when you wrestle, you're good at like 1, 2, 3 techniques, and then you just like apply those 3 techniques in like
A
tons
million
of different grips and
situations.
setups, and that's what you
Yes.
do. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's
I
like
mean, it's
any
very
wrestling,
rare that you have
grappling.
somebody.
You get that in any wrestling and grappling art when you're doing it for long enough. That's basically what it boils down to. You're not going to be a master or highly skilled at every single technique there is, but you're going to find a few that are more suited to you. And then through experience
Exactly.
and feeling, you understand how they apply in different scenarios and situations. And then you start seeing them everywhere. So, yeah.
Yeah, I 100%. Like it's not just a Shuaijiao, it's for all wrestling.
Yeah.
Like in the end, the goal is to win the match. It's not to show that you know 100 techniques. And if I can win the match with only one technique, and I can win all the matches with that technique, like a double leg, or I don't know, in judo it could be, I don't know, uchimata. You just throw, like you just go with that, and that's it, right?
Exactly.
And I think it's like for wrestling is very important, like having the feeling, the right feeling, feeling the opponent, and then you having feelings for wrestling. I think it's what levels your wrestling.
Right. Right.
Because like at least to me, it's very important. But at least especially after my injury, it's very important to. I think there's 2 types of wrestlers mainly. There's like the angry wrestlers, angry in the sense that they're very, very aggressive.
Yeah.
So they go and they're like, they have a lot of energy and they can like charge at you. And not just charging, but like they're very, I don't want to say energetic, but very active.
Proactive.
And then there's another
Yeah.
kind of wrestlers, yeah. And there's another kind of wrestlers that is more, I don't want to say feelingless, but it's like an empty jar, like void. It doesn't show you any emotion. It's just like he's waiting or he attacks sometimes, but it's not like you don't get that angry feeling.
Okay.
And I'm trying to be a little more like that because like I think to grow in a sense, especially in training and stuff, you need to have that kind of approach. Like you have to lose 100 times to learn a technique. You have to lose to thousands of people to get better. And that's again always back to that like feeling, approach. And I think for like all those sparring environments and matches with your friends, it's a very important attitude to keep your ego outside of the mat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Well,
I think when that gets involved is a problem.
what you've just mentioned, I mean, in grappling, I have the same thing, and we always call like the white belts the angry white belt club because it's the same thing. They're like going crazy. They're always going. They're going extra hard and whatever, and you realize after time that actually that's not the most intelligent way to approach the combat, right? It's not the.
Yeah.
And then you start to try to feel and then take advantage and, do everything at the right time in the right way. That's more important. That's about feeling. So, yeah. It's an experience thing, I think.
So, and I definitely, and it depends also the type of person you are. Like if you're a person with a ton of energy, you can do that. But like if you need to keep your energy in the tank, otherwise, like,
Yeah.
it's not that easy.
Yeah.
So back to Li Deshun, I learned about him through that like documentary and other small video about the group he teaches to, which is called Shuangxiong
Yeah, we
Jiaoguan,
spoke a little bit
which is
about
the
that.
two heroes.
Yeah.
Yes. And and then there was like one of his ex-students, one of his older students that posted on YouTube like I think at least a good 20, 25 videos of him teaching techniques during the class and then them practicing them. And I was like looking at those videos like the whole day, every day. And I really, really like the way he teaches, the way he moved. Because in a sense, in some things, his Shuaijiao is a little bit different from others. Of course, like every teacher has its own way of doing certain movements in Zhiben Gong or in techniques. And I don't really think there's like the perfect way. I think there's just like many ways to do the same thing, and then you can like just learn all of them and then train them in different situations or scenarios, or like depending on the person, like if you're very tall, you're going to do a certain movement maybe better in a way than in another. But I really like the way he moved and the way he taught in those videos. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go there. And well, in a sense, I don't want to say like that I choose my university to be closer to the where he taught, but let's say that like choosing Beijing was
Part of the
one of the
reason.
big reasons was of course part of the reason, let's say.
Okay.
And I found his phone number again on internet, like the same thing is with the other guy in the book. I was
Right.
like, let's maybe see if I can find his number on the internet, like I was like Googling on Baidu.
Right.
I was looking for, 双生小馆, Li Deshun, blah, blah, blah. At a certain point, a number pops up. And then again, I put it into WeChat and I find his contact. So all of a sudden I had his WeChat. And I was like, okay, I'll just send him a message. I was like, I'm an Italian guy. I'm coming there to study. I would like to join. And he was like, perfect. We train at the 首都体育学院, which is the capital sports academy. We have to pay a rent, so you're gonna have to pay a fee every month. But we train 3 days, 4 days a week, and you're welcome to come. So I was like, yeah, perfect. And I moved to Beijing. I waited, I think, 2 weeks before going because I had to settle in my dormitory, started to buy all the things that I needed. And then the first night I went there and I was like, hi, I sent you a message. I want to join. He didn't talk with me. The guy that talked with me was Meng Ge, which is one of the main coaches.
Okay.
Lavell also met him.
Right.
The crazy guy.
Yeah. I've seen some things that you've sent as well about him.
Yeah,
He's a character.
Incredible. He's a character. And he threw me around like forever at the beginning. He's like 56, 60 kg, and he was like throwing me fucking all everywhere when I got there. And he was like, okay, this is the fee, this is a jacket. And I paid, I remember 6 months altogether. So it was a lot of money for me, but I wanted, to
Commit.
First of all, to show that I was like, yeah, commit. I didn't want to just come one time and stuff. I didn't first day I paid and then I started. And I started, the class was at the beginning, Jiben Gong, warm up Jiben Gong, and then you have fallings, warm up again, 抢手, so jacket work, 配合练习, and then so technique work, and then you have fighting.
Right.
And I loved it since the beginning, but the introduction to the group, the guys, it was kind of tough because Li Deshun works like this. He doesn't teach unless he teaches the techniques, and he takes care of part of the fighting. And then after the class, he gives like if there's something to say, he gives like a general speech before going home.
Okay.
And well, first of all, like his Beijing accent in this like huge training hall was incomprehensible. Like I couldn't at the beginning. I was like I couldn't understand what he was saying.
All you heard was
Because he's Beijing accent. Yeah,
yeah,
the
okay.
same. Yeah. And he's like, his family always lived in Beijing, so like real old Lao Beijing.
Right.
So very strong accent. And this freaking training hall, everything was like, how to say, like echoing. And it was
yeah.
like weird. It was like 100 people. But the big I was saying in the beginning was tough because I was the only foreigner, and I was moving well because I had like a big background with Chinese martial arts. So training solo drills, I was moving. Most of the times, like better than the average guy there.
Yeah.
In the solo drills, of course, like if you did a lot of traditional stuff, I mean, doing drills once you get used to them, it's not super complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I already had a good mobility and stuff, so I didn't have to work on, stretching, all that kind of stuff. And then I started wrestling, and I don't want to say they were not friendly because most of them were, but some of them were not really friendly. Li Deshun was like cool. He would just always like wearing his jacket in the corner, doing his own things, and then sometimes doing jiangshao with the coaches and getting some throws in because he's like starting to get old, so it doesn't really wrestle 100% anymore because he also had some like
injuries,
like physical problems, injuries and stuff.
Of course.
But he was still like strong. He's like not super old. He's like pretty still young. But you don't want to get hurt wrestling with young guys.
Of course.
But sometimes, I was like doing the Shijan part, so the fighting and wrestling part. I had some partners that were not really happy that I was like, let's say there or...
Yeah, you mentioned it.
Maybe they wanted me... I mentioned it, right?
Yeah, you mentioned somebody slapping you.
Yeah, like I was doing it and my opponent, all of it, slapped me in the face. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And nobody said anything. But then, when you start showing them, or at least it was like that for me. Like, I don't want to say it's like for everybody. And it's going to be the same everywhere. But like, that's what I experienced there. Yeah. Then everybody, became very friendly. I kept some like, I don't want to say beef. It's not beef. Like some competition with you guys. Because at a certain point, after, I don't remember how much time, Li Deshun started to ask me to lead the trainings every time.
Yes.
Yeah, he started to ask me, Manu, today, of course he doesn't call me Manu, because like it doesn't really sound good in Chinese. Yeah. But he was like, can you lead the workout? And so I started slowly first leading the 基本功 part, and then I started leading the fallings, and then I started leading the warm-ups, and then sometimes he was asking me to explain certain techniques. Of course, he always took care of the shijan and the actual explanation of techniques.
So the teaching of technical details like and shijan the sparring.
It's him.
Yeah.
Yes. But sometimes, we had some like guests.
Yeah.
In or dropping in for, and there were like these Chinese guys coming in and seeing this like foreigners leading a workout. It was like, what's happening here? But it was nice, and in the end, all the coaches and the guys were like very, very like we became very friends, like very close friends.
What was Li Deshun's teaching character like? Was he a patient teacher?
Oh yeah, this is interesting. So I told you he always was in the corner, and was always in the corner, observing people. And then sometimes during maybe the Jibengong, he came by and started maybe to give some advice on, not always to everybody. Sometimes it was to one people, and other times maybe to everybody. It depends.
Right.
He's not super talkative, so he explains details. He get very fired up sometimes, but that's it. And then he always observes it, but he leads more when we do like 配合练习, so technique work.
Right.
And 实战. He gets really fired up during the wrestling part.
Okay.
He's like, he observes, he always walks around with his, it's not a clock, it's like, yeah, it's to measure like the rounds and stuff.
The stopwatch.
And he's very strict. Stopwatch, exactly. He's very strict. I have a video, I don't know, I'll send you maybe, of two of the young guys, which are also very, very good. They probably didn't listen to him when they were doing like, I think the fighting part. And like, he always walks around with the stopwatch and sometimes with a stick. So he called them by to get them to beat them in the ass with a stick. And both of them got hit like 3 or 4 times. And the tallest one of the two, which is a very funny guy, and he's the cousin of Liu Tianshi.
Sorry, he's the cousin of who?
Which is Shuaijiao from Liu Tiansheng, which is a famous Shuaijiao wrestler from Tianjin.
Yeah.
No, Baoding, sorry. Like national champions, very, very good guy. Mm-hmm. But his cousin is for reason like 3 times taller. So like Liu Tiansheng is pretty short, and this guy is like 193.
Okay.
So this guy got slapped got beaten on his ass so hard that the stick left him like a white mark on his butt, like super evident. And he like sent a picture on the group saying, "This is what happens when you don't listen to Li Laoshi,
right?
The Master Li." But he's like, he gives very good advice on Shujiao, on the fighting part, and he's still very strong. Like when you, I did with him a couple times, only 枪手, not a full wrestler,
yeah.
Full bout. Yeah, only jacket work, like you grab, I grab, we fight on the grips.
Grip fighting.
And grip fighting, and his grips are still extremely strong.
Yeah.
But more than just strong, he's like very smart with grips. He knows perfect. The way he shows you that like you're being thrown without throwing you is amazing. He had like an interesting story. I don't remember if I about this, but he comes from a wrestling family.
Right.
A wrestling family is a family where everybody wrestles.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this.
Oh, okay.
Him, his brother, his father was teaching them. Yeah.
Yes. And his father learned from one of the last guys that were inside the shop.
Ooh. I don't know if it's my connection is okay. I don't know if it's your connection, but it's breaking up a little bit.
I can hear you perfectly here, so probably, I don't know, it's my connection. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Anyway, let's carry on. Hopefully it does. It just broke up a couple of times while you were saying that about. We didn't hear clearly. Me? Yeah, I hear you.
So I said he comes from a wrestling family.
Yeah.
And his father teaching was way more strict than him. Like he's okay, let's say. He gets mad when you don't listen to him. It gets a little mad when you do what you want, and instead of like, let's say,
what he
you don't.
You to.
It's basically again like not listening. Yeah. What they tell. He's very, he's a handsome guy. Like he's very nice to everybody. It's just a little rough, but like you're not playing like you're not playing games, right? But his father, he told us like his stories of stuff that. So for example, like he lost a match, and the matches back in the days were like public, so especially the big ones.
Yeah.
And there was like a big crowd watching you, and he didn't tell his dad that He came back home. His dad found out and he slapped him in the face. He was like, "Oh, you're a disgrace," and blah blah. And bear in mind, Li Deshun was one of the best at, like, during his time. Like, he almost never lost. And his dad was really, really strict about training.
Right.
You can see that in the end with his techniques. Like, his technical, his approach, his techniques are very, I think, I don't want to say refined, because refined, but they're very
precise.
On precise, yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's
There's some very interesting details.
I mean, that's two sides of something that I find, and I find it in many things. I mean, I find it with my own teacher as well. When you meet more and more teachers over time, you realize that there's a lot of teachers that are actually, they're pretty good. They can be good at doing a technique. But when it comes to telling you the important technical points.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Did I break up?
Yeah, I lost the signal for a little bit.
Yeah, there's something up with the connection. I don't know if it's my side, your side, or what. But anyway, let's hope it stays a bit stable. Basically, what I was saying was that, as you meet more teachers, you realize there can be a lot of teachers that are very good at doing something themselves, but very bad at telling you how to do it, what's important, the technical information, the technical details, the points, the main points and the key points about something. And then you find teachers which are rare, which are very good at doing it and very good at teaching it. So those are they're one in a million, but when you find them, you should, really learn everything you can from them. So, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, for wrestling and for martial arts, teaching. It's not just about teaching. I think it's being able to pass a technique or technical points and getting your student to understand what's important in this technique. Because for you, it might be already
You're
something
used to
that you're used to it, and you just don't need to think about it or to remember the exact points. But yeah, there's some teachers naturally good at passing down skills.
Yeah.
And then I don't think there's something that is teachable.
No. Like I said, I think it's quite rare, and I think it's got to do a lot with a person's personality, and then how his personality drove him into the cerebral part of training. In other words, the mental part of training, because it's something I picked up from my teacher, but my teacher himself is like that. He thinks very deeply about everything. So, and not because he has a goal to teach. That was never why he was like that. His goal was to understand and do it better. So he would sit and ask himself why with everything. Like, why is it like this? Why am I doing it like this? Why does it feel like that? Why are we trying to do this? What's the point? Why is it worse? Why is it better? And then he would slowly refine all of these aspects over years and years and years. And when you understand the why so deeply, of course you can teach it. You can teach it better and clearer than most people. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think to become a person like your teacher or Li Deshun, or hopefully maybe us in the future too, I think you need to be almost obsessed with these things.
Exactly.
And think about it the whole day.
Exactly.
When you have a free time, what do? You don't randomly think about stuff, but just, yesterday that technique that I did, why didn't it work? How can I do it better? And now that we have phones, we can look at ourselves and can be like, oh, this was not good. That was not good.
Right.
You need to be obsessed with these things.
Obsessed. That's exactly what it is. You have to be obsessed. So, yeah. Do you think...
I think it's a good obsession,
It is, of course. But do you think Li Deshun, coming from a family that was... I mean, he was going to do wrestling whether he liked it or not, and then he was pushed so hard by a strict father. Did he genuinely love wrestling? Because I know many Chinese martial artists that went through that kind of family. My wife is one who is like that as well. She went through family, expected her to train. They were training. Out of her siblings, she was the one that had to train. They chose her to do all the training. And then she was pushed into it in a professional capacity, so much so that she started to actually not like it. I mean, and I've met many other people like that came from that environment. At the end of it, they were like, I do it because it's my job, but I hate it, you know? So did he genuinely love wrestling?
Well, this is actually an interesting question because I asked him something similar or along these lines. I asked him about when he started wrestling. And his dad didn't really push him to wrestle. So what happened was that when he was around, I think 14, his dad brought him to a jiaochang, which is a wrestling ground.
Right.
In a park. I think it was Ditan Jiaochang.
Okay.
It was one of the main wrestling grounds in Beijing.
Yeah.
And how wrestling worked back then. Well, of course, I think he still had like professional team. I don't remember when he was younger, but then when he was like a kid. But when he was like in his 20s, there were professional teams. Because you had the national games.
Yes.
But wrestling from the people's perspective was organized, and you have these wrestling grounds where there's like a main teacher or some main wrestlers, and everybody gathers there either every day or in the weekend. The wrestlers, of course, train every day.
Yeah.
But people come to see during the weekend generally, and you have a mat or the grass, and you wrestle on there. And there's like tons. Back in the days, when my teacher was young, there was still a lot of people like interested in wrestling because this was before wrestling was erased from the national sport game.
Yeah.
Yes. So a ton of people were in the park like observing the guys wrestling, cheering. And you have the situation where so the guys also challenge, people there, and they walk around like almost naked just with their pants and the belt, let's say not completely on. They put the belt inside their pants, hanging down. They show the jacket to the public. They speak with the public, and they're like, it's very close to the Tianqiao.
Okay. Like
Standard,
performance part.
Tianqiao,
Yeah.
you have
crowd work.
Yes. There's also very big performance. Yes. And then they start wrestling, and everybody was cheering. And Li Deshun was like, when I saw that, and I saw all those like the noise, the people having fun, the wrestlers, doing some of these beautiful techniques to each other, I wanted to wrestle too. And I was lucky that I came from a wrestling family, and my wrestling ancestors were from the Qing dynasty in the Ying. So
Right.
I started to wrestle with my dad. And he generally liked it. He was like, more than his two brothers, wrestling was his obsession.
Right.
Like his two brothers liked it, they wrestled, but he, as an older brother, he was completely obsessed with wrestling. That was all his life.
Nice.
And yeah, he became part of, I think, the train station team
Right.
in Beijing, and started competing. And he was one of the, maybe the most important guy in Beijing during his time when he was younger.
Oh, that's very interesting. I remember watching that Goodbye to the Feeling of Wrestling documentary. It's always funny because you'll see even you saw the little video of Wang Wenyong that I released in subtitles, and I like where he's saying, wrestling, it's a good form of exercise. It helps you prevent injuries, and we all know these things. We say these things, but the truth is, you're probably going to get injured in some form or the other. And I remember even in that documentary, you see this guy do a kind of a reversal of a sprawl, which is a classical move where you wrap the guy's arms and you flip him over, and And you fall pretty hard if you're not careful, and there's nothing you can do about it because the guy's wrapped his arms around your arms. So you just go down, bang, and you see, okay, the guy's shoulder must have been his AC joint. I've had my AC joint torn in a similar way. It was with a throw as well. And I was like, oh, I know what that's like. But it's always funny watching and listening to, we have to say the same thing. Oh, it's Chinese martial arts. It's all about keeping you healthy and avoiding injury. But the truth is, it's a martial art. You've been injured. I mean, you've had a pretty serious injury. You've injured other people, not deliberately, but it's happened. So
it happened. Yeah.
What happened to with your injury? I mean, how did you get injured?
Well, I'll first tell you a little bit about the backstory of that event that you saw in the Zaijian Qing.
Yeah.
So, I'm not gonna say names and stuff because I don't want to do it. But the guy that injured the other guy is one of the best there. He's really good, and he really, really, really strong. But he has this tendency of not being able to protect his opponent
and control himself
when he wrestles, and especially controlling himself, and especially this is a problem when it is in training. Like, we're not in a competition, okay? Like, in a competition environment, that you need, it can happen, but it doesn't have, it can't happen during training.
Of course.
And he's one of the few that is among the older students of Li Deshun that trained also with other teachers and never became a former student of Li Deshun for many reasons. One of them being the fact that Li Laoshi is very strict about injuries. He's like, injuries can happen, but if you keep injuring other people, probably there's a problem not with other people, but with you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly right.
It's not that other people are too soft. It's maybe that you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And I saw few big because when I was there, he injured somebody else too.
Oh, nice.
And already was a period that it was not training regularly there. So Li Deshun is very strict on this, and that guy injure somebody again, and Li Laoshi kind of have him leave the training ground.
Oh, really?
I don't remember if he came back. I don't know right now. Yeah, he was like, go away. You can't keep injuring people.
But the truth is this, that technique that he did in the video, we know that technique will injure someone. We know that. So why did
There's a lot of stuff in Shuaijiao there.
Yeah, but this one is one of those things that you can't even break your fall. And again, depending on who you're going to do it to, I mean, if you're doing it to somebody with far less experience than you know the chance of injuring them is really high. So just don't do it, or maybe warn the guy, say, hey, look, if you do this, I can do this. Let me show you very slowly. This is what and it's a risk. I'm not going to do it to you. Anyway, then both people are learning or whatever. But to just go, wha-bang, I mean, the guy's, I don't know, 3 months probably it would have taken for his shoulder to heal. So, I mean, mine took 3 months. I remember that. It was funny with me. When my shoulder came out, it was 2 days before I had to go overseas and teach at a course. So that was a bit shitty. But anyway, yeah, I had to fly on a plane with my shoulder all screwed up and then go to a competition and a course and teach. Luckily, it was a theoretical course, and then the competition I was judging at, I didn't have to move my arm too much. But, anyway, these things happen. Yeah. Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, sorry, the sound completely disappeared.
Yeah. It's happened a couple of times. Anyway, I was just saying, my experience with that kind of a situation. Do you? I mean, you trained with Li Deshun until you weren't here anymore, right?
Yeah, I trained there, and in a few other places where they brought us until I got injured, and then the COVID hit.
Of course. Yeah, so we were going to talk about your injury. What did you do? What happened with your injury?
My injury. So I was preparing for a competition, and so we're starting to wrestle faster and
Yeah.
with a little more power. And so let's have a disclaimer. The first disclaimer is don't train if you know you're already injured.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's a good point. But I was younger. I was like all fired up, and I was like, it's okay. My knee will heal. So I already had a meniscus injury to that
Okay.
knee. I think it was a meniscus injury.
Yeah.
What was is that in the morning, when I stood up, first in the morning, my leg would completely shut off because I would be feeling like an intense sharp pain in the knee, and the whole leg would just shut off. And when I was like, for example, biking or pushing on the ground, the knee would feel like a very extreme stabbing pain in the middle of the knee.
That doesn't sound like
And I thought
meniscus. That
like,
sounds like ligament injury.
oh really?
Yeah, of course. I
I,
mean,
th- I think I thought it was a meniscus.
the key, I mean, there could be pain, similar pain with meniscus, but more generally with meniscus, it's instability that you feel. So the key problem with meniscus is that it's like, feels like it's coming out of its place. That's the key thing because the meniscus is torn. But what you're talking about, sharp stabbing pain, sounds like a tear to a ligament, probably your ACL. So you probably already had a slight tear to your ACL.
And yeah, then probably already had something like that.
The thing with an
And I was like,
ACL
"It's okay,
tear,
I'm gonna go back."
yeah, the thing with an ACL tear is usually if you injure your ACL, you simultaneously injure your meniscus anyway. So
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened. And I was like, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna go back in June for summer. I'm gonna have a checkup and maybe a small surgery, and then 1 month, and I'll be okay.
yeah.
So that night I was already tired. It was like my last bout of the night. I didn't want to do it, but the coach was like, "Go up with Zhang Yi," which is one of the other like the heavier guy in the team. He was very young. He was like 18 or 19. Very big, very strong, tall, both taller and like heavier than me. I think at the time he was walking around 96 kg. But for me, generally, it wasn't a problem. I could like generally win him, like get him tired. My grips were better, but he was really strong. And what I was winning, and then I decided to go for the last technique. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this technique. It's a big movement, and which is pei. It's like a variation of try.
Okay.
So you basically, for those that don't know it, it's kind of like seoi nage.
Yeah.
But you have, instead of having your feet parallel, you have your back feet in between his legs, and you're like
Splitting
going
it.
forward with all the weights on one leg. Yeah, like a split. And well, I entered wrong with my leg, so the stepping was wrong. And instead of having my knee straight in front of me or like slightly out, my knee was inside. And when I like charged him on my shoulders, he came down on the side and my knee broke towards the inside.
Oh, so your knee was already buckling inside a little bit, and then when he was on top of you, it just went completely.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I think so. That's what I think happened.
Well, that's
like I have a
probably what
video, but up to today, I still haven't watched it.
Yeah, I think don't watch it.
Yeah, and what happened was that my MCL broke, and then my ACL and my meniscus broke altogether.
Nice. That's a serious injury.
So my knee just went bang, exploded.
Ow.
And I knew what it was because my girlfriend, she's a professional rugby player.
Okay.
And she tore her ACL on her left knee around April the same year. And I knew exactly, she told me, the symptoms and everything, how does it feel? And I was there for the recovery. She tore it in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I think, yeah, not Los Angeles. Las Vegas in a big tournament.
Okay.
Came back. He got surgery in the U.S. Came back to China, and I was there for the rehab, and So when I got injured, I was like, "Oh, I know what it is. I already knew what it was."
Yeah.
They brought me to the hospital. I almost passed out outside the gym because I couldn't stand. I was like lying on the floor, sitting down. Felt like I had to puke.
Yeah.
And I went to the hospital and it was like, "Oh, we can give you X-rays," but I was like, it's not a bone thing. I need an MRI.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, we don't have an MRI right now." And I was like, "Okay." Then they sent me home without even like a knee brace, nothing, like nothing around my knee. I'm not joking. This is like my knee was like hanging dead, like my leg was hanging dead of my body. Like if I tell you how my lower leg moved that night because like there was no ligament left, it was like weird. And
Jesus.
yeah, but to say again, like my teammates, one brought me to the hospital with his car and then like brought me basically on his shoulders back to my dormitory inside and into my room.
Wow.
Because they didn't even give me crutches.
Oh, that's silly.
And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say too much, but China is a little bit tricky sometimes.
Tell me about it.
And yeah, exactly. And the first night was terrible. Well, first of all, I had to drag myself into the shower.
Yeah.
I don't know how I did it. Basically, at a certain point, like because I was living in a dorm, a guy came out the door and was like, "Do you need help?" And it's like, "Yeah, can you help me go to the shower?" And then I came back. And the first night was terrible because my knee was moving and there was no brace and I couldn't sleep. The day after, I went to see a doctor and he was like, "Yeah, it's probably something like that, but you need a..."
MRI.
Well, I got a brace, finally. You need an MRI. And he was like, "We can give you one in like a week." I was like, you know what? I'm going to fly back to Italy.
Yeah.
Then I came back home, got an MRI and stuff, and then COVID hit. That's what happened.
So you've been back in Italy
And this was like
since
my
then.
main injury.
Yeah, but you had surgery, obviously.
Since then, yeah. Yeah, I had surgery in February 2020.
Did they take a piece of your hamstring to reconstruct your ACL and the other ligament?
Well, first of all, I had to do a rehab for my MCL.
Okay.
First of all, I had to wait for that to heal completely because it was a second-degree tear.
Oh, so it wasn't full.
And no, it wasn't full, luckily. And when it healed, my leg wasn't bending anymore. So at all, like my leg was a stiff piece of wood. So I had to work on bending the knee first. Then when I got back to bending it and rebuild some muscle, I was able to do the surgery. And the reconstructive surgery for the ACL that I did was with a patellar tendon.
Okay.
So they took a string of my patellar tendon and used it as a new ACL.
Yeah, that's usually either patella or they use part of your hamstring, depending.
Yeah, the hamstring graft, my surgeon told me for him, if you like, he works mainly with volleyball players that jump a lot and need a lot of knee stability. It's like I have more like a higher success rate with the patellar because it's stronger. Instead, the hamstring graft is a little is less strong than the patellar tendon.
Right.
But like I'm not a surgeon, so I was just like fix my knee. I don't care.
Just put super glue in there if you need to. Just fix it.
Exactly.
Anyway, yeah. So you.
It's terrible. I don't wish.
How long was
this to anybody?
Yeah. How long was your rehab after that? 6 months.
1 year and a half.
Yeah, at least 6 months usually.
No, 1 year and a half.
And how do you feel now?
Now it's good. I think I'm 100%.
Are you?
My knee sometimes has.
Are you scared to wrestle?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm still scared.
I've had 3 knee
both of my
surgeries. I've had 3 knee surgeries. So yeah, I know what that's kind
wow.
of. 2 on the one knee, 1 on the other. Actually 4, but the 4th one wasn't really a knee surgery. It was because on the 2nd or the 3rd surgery, the doctor clipped. I don't know what he did. He hit one of the ligaments and something was leaking out of it. Over time, it created this little bubble that they had to go in and then take
Oh wow.
the bubble out. So I don't. That wasn't really a knee problem. That was just something else. But that all happened because of the surgery. And yeah, I mean, it's always in the back of your head, especially when you're doing like wrestling or grappling or sparring or whatever. It's always there. So you gotta keep your knees and your legs strong all the time. That's the only thing you can do. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good combination of a little bit of fear, but not fear, but like awareness. Because before I was really like going ham.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Like, no, you shouldn't. Everybody listening, don't do that. Remember that depending on the size of your opponent, you have to use certain techniques. If your opponent is a very big dude, you don't want to do like back throws. Just wrestle him on the front.
Just try trip him from the front. That's it. You don't want him falling on you.
Exactly. Well, I learned that.
Okay. Well,
you learn some.
Well, yeah, you learn the hard way, isn't it? So, unfortunately for us, it's like you learn something through an injury that changes you forever. That injury changes you forever.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
That's the issue. So,
I hated it, but I would say I learned a lot of things.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, I don't think anybody hasn't had some form of injury. Some people are lucky and they avoid serious injuries. Some people don't. But I think everybody gets some sort of injury here and there through these practices in one way or the other. You try to listen and avoid it, but sometimes you can't. So yeah. I wanted to ask you, do you still stay in contact with your teacher, Li Deshun?
Oh, so Li Deshun is not famous to use his phone a lot. So let's say I'm not directly in contact with him, but I'm in contact with all the guys, all the coaches and stuff. So I'm in contact with him through them. Right. Because he really doesn't use his phone at all.
He's still teaching?
So that's the thing, with COVID, so for those that are unaware of the situation in the universities, when COVID hit, even like after, like, let's say the COVID situation was a little better in China, the university started controlling. That was already happening before, but like when COVID hit, it got worse. Like they started controlling whoever was going in and getting out of the university. So at a certain point, they couldn't train in 首都体育学院 anymore because it was locked. Like only students could get in.
Right.
So for a period, the group was like without a place to wrestle at all, and still is like 首都体育学院 still is only for students. So during this period, one of the coaches kind of like rented a place and opened kind of like his own 教馆, which is like a, let's say, how to say it, like a friend to the original one. And my teacher is teaching there sometimes, but it's not like full on as before.
Okay.
And it was just like mainly amateurs and stuff.
I don't think things, I mean, you know what's going on here now, so I don't know when this is going to pass, but I think like a lot of things are not going to be the same ever in a lot of these places, so we'll see what happens afterwards.
Yes.
I mean, I did hear though that just recently, I think it was last month, the government here has made Shuaijiao part of the physical education program for children going to school in Beijing, and I don't know if it's all of China, but in Beijing it is a physical education.
It might be with all of China. I think it's like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's a few weeks ago. So that's something interesting. So hopefully there's a lot more interest in the art, but we'll see what happens and how it's managed.
Yeah. So. Exactly. But But I don't think like, and this is a very interesting topic which we could maybe one time even discuss with Lavell. Like mandating people to train
Exactly.
at that level doesn't necessarily mean that you're installing interest in the people.
You see, you're exactly right. And only people that have lived here and understand how things work here will understand what we've just said. Because the entire approach to sport here is not the way we're used to. We're used to things coming and growing organically in a way that a child, or as you're young, through play, you choose the things that you enjoy playing, and out of genuine interest, it goes from there, from amateur, hobby, into semi, team kind of things in school, and then if you excel, it grows naturally out of there to the profession. Here, it's always been disconnected from the grassroots. A lot of the sporting way is, they'll be like, cool, we need a team for this, cool. Go grab a bunch of kids over there and make them be full-time X, Y, and Z sport players. So it's totally disconnected from organic growth, and we'll see what happens and how it's managed. But if it's handled like that, then it's never going to be something that's going to be naturally big and have because like all that has to happen is one regulation has to change, and then nobody will do it anymore. So
exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just wanted to get this.
Oh
no, go ahead. Go ahead. If there's more you want to add, please do.
No, I said like very, very few, or like a very brief thing. I also think that mandating, the kids to learn Shuaijiao, you need to ask yourself, what Shuaijiao are you teaching?
Yeah.
Like, is it related to, the actual? I don't want to say always use a traditional Shuaijiao, but like the Shuaijiao that has cultural roots and history, or you're teaching some wrestling with a jacket with short sleeves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Hopefully it's good.
We'll see what they do and how it's put together. Who's teaching, what they're teaching, all these things are to be taken into consideration to answer that question. So
yes.
Anyway. All right, man. So I don't want to take too long. I mean, the podcast was pretty long already. I wanted to get a bit of the story about you with your teacher, Li Deshun, and a couple of those details, and now we did. So maybe, like we said in the last, when we were recording this the first time, we'll have another chat with Lavell at some point soon and talk about some other interesting related topics. And we'll see what the future holds. If there's any contact details, anything you want released to the public, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, etc., you'll send them to me. I'll put them in the show notes, and they'll be available for people.
Perfect.
All right. So thanks so much for coming on and doing this little filler. Sorry about the last recording with the possible electricity cut, but at least we filled that gap now. So thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm used to electricity gaps and water gaps. When I was in university, we didn't have like electricity or water like at least once a week. So
yeah, it happens.
I understand that.
Yeah. All right, man. Okay, you keep well there, and we'll be in touch. Bye for now.
Thank you, Byron. It was a pleasure.
No, pleasure was mine.
Have a good day too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.